We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're back previewing the 2022 NFL season. We've made it 3/4 of the way through the league here, Sam. Mm-hmm. It's on to the Wests, the AFC and the NFC West here today.
The Wests.
Yeah.
Multiple
West
True.
divisions. The Western divisions.
Yep.
We're doing that today. You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, man. How's everything going?
Good. A little charity update. We are up to $852 raised for needs who help facilitate the payment, the cost of service dogs for people. Because apparently getting a service dog costs upwards of $17,000 and then another $40,000 to train the damn thing. And obviously that's pretty freaking expensive. So we've got a bunch of people donating. We appreciate every single donation that comes in, however big or small. And a reminder that you or I or both are donating to each one of these charity things as well as just begging people for money for a good cause. So
that's right.
Thank you to everybody. And as soon as we hit our goal, I'm going to break out the cannon, fire up 60 miles an hour.
Sam D. Johnson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's you up there. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see you throw.
I need a baseball. That's probably
if we can do it by next Friday, I could probably sneak you on to Great American with me for my Major League debut.
Is there a standard ball that we need to use for this? Because there appears to be quite a range in price for these things.
Yeah. Well, the Major League ball is probably most expensive.
Yeah.
You can
Surely
get your classic.
Well, maybe not you, but do you know people that have one of these, a spare one? Because they must go through a lot of these things, right?
We had I had a former teammate steal a whole lot of Major League baseballs from spring training and then flip them on eBay.
Right.
Yes.
Obviously, you wouldn't have had the access given your career. But
no, we would
use the same
subtly,
balls. The minor leagues, they got you get like a lower down level.
So the minor league ball is like a softer version of the Major League ball. Usually, a little bit higher seam in the minor league ball. The Major League ball's got a pretty tight seam. The ball changes a lot though too, year to year. The balls are also tested, by the way, right here, UMass Lowell. I'm rocking my UMass Lowell. We have like the foremost baseball testing facility in the world.
Yeah?
Right there at UMass Lowell.
What?
Rocking at my my alma mater here.
Is that like just like a robot arm and a stick? What?
I've actually never been there. I've never been into the facility.
Because that doesn't feel like a tremendously taxing thing. Test baseballs.
Yeah, you get them hit. You get them hit, so you understand like how hard the ball gets hit and all that stuff.
But like the facility feels like it should just be like a T-ball holder and a bat on a stick.
It might be. I never actually went down there to check it out.
Anyway, what I'm saying is I don't want to pay like $50, whatever it is, for an official.
It doesn't
Major
really
League
matter.
Ball. I need a ball.
If you get a Major League ball with tighter seams, you might throw it a little bit harder.
Oh, then let's do that then.
Yeah. The diamond might have some bigger seams that might cut up your fingers a little bit. If you throw too much.
Cut up your
You
fingers?
get blister issues.
This was like when you were telling me that, if I would try to catch one of your pitches, it would break my thumb through the giant fluffy mitt thing.
Yeah, we're talking percentage points here.
I don't think I'm buying anything you're selling when it comes to baseball anymore.
Even if I'm going into the UMass Lowell Hall of Fame?
Even then, yes.
With my teammates, of course.
Of course, yeah, not just you.
We're going to celebrate the 01-02 UMass Lowell baseball team.
It's about damn time.
Going to the Hall of Fame. Anyway.
Yeah.
You ready to go? Mm-hmm. Ready to go with the West? Go check out Sam's pin tweet at PFF.
Yes.
_
or the description of this podcast on YouTube or audio, you'll find the GoFundMe.
I guess we could also kick it off by saying the best place to play fantasy football this summer is Underdog Fantasy. Their Best Ball Mania tournament has $10 million in total prizes, and the best part is you just draft your fantasy football team, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. Underdog gives you your best score each week of the season, and the highest scores at the end of the year win. It is the best time to draft right now. Join Underdog. Take your shot at a $1 million draft. Strategically, get those high upside players because it is best ball. That's how you want to do it. Underdog's going to double your first deposit. This is the big one. Double it when you play. Deposit up to $100 when you sign up with the promo code PFF. And if you play 10 of those dollars using the promo code PFF, you get a free PFF subscription, which happens to now be PFF Plus. So what are you waiting for? Head to UnderdogFantasy.com or the App Store. Play $10 with code PFF and draft your Best Ball Mania team today. All right, man. Well, we're going to go through the AFC and the NFC West divisions. Let's start with the Denver Broncos. This is it. They got a quarterback.
Yep.
The Denver Broncos. We've been sitting here for 2 years saying pretty good roster, love what they've done defensively, and like the playmakers that they've added offensively, and all this fun stuff. Now Russell Wilson comes in. Last year it was Teddy Bridgewater. The year before that was pretty much Drew Lock. So they should be much better.
Yeah.
What are we expecting from the Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they should be dramatically better. The question is going to be how much better. And I've kind of been all over the map on this over the course of the offseason. You know, everybody's initial reaction is, wow, Denver getting an amazing quarterback. We're golden. This is going to be we're great. Jerry Jeudy to the moon, Cortland Sutton, the draft stock, everything's going to be incredible. And then the more you think about it, the more you're like, yeah, we're not really getting Russell Wilson at his very peak, though. Obviously, coming off an injured, the first real injury he's had in the NFL, missed time, wasn't playing particularly well last season, even outside of the injury. And that's been a bit of a downswing from his 2.5 year period where he was one of the genuinely best quarterbacks in the NFL, PFF grades of 90 and all those kinds of things. So Wilson's grading and I think overall performance has kind of been up and down to 3 different levels, really. And the question is, which version are Denver getting? And how much of the let Russ cook thing was just an easy way of beating Pete Carroll as, you know, the old dinosaur coach who wasn't adjusting to the modern era? And how much of it is actually kind of inherent in the way Russell Wilson plays football? And can, you know, Nathaniel Hackett's offense come in there and do something different? Or is this part of the deal with Russell Wilson? I started off thinking that may be a concern. And then the closer we get to actual football, I'm kind of swinging back in the other direction now and saying, you know what, there may be like a limit and a ceiling to this, but Russell Wilson plus Jerry Jeudy plus Cortland Sutton, it's just going to be fireworks anyway. So to hell with it.
I'm curious about a lot of things here. First off, Russell Wilson, the last year and a half of grading. Do you want the quick history?
Sure.
As we do it.
Quick history. There
was a point. I would say, you know, we talk about tiered quarterbacks all the time here. I think for the majority of Russell Wilson's career, he was a pretty good tier 2 quarterback. That's a guy that's in the top 8, probably not in the top 4. Guy you can win with, guy that's generally going to elevate your team above where they should be, right? Above the Matt Ryan inflection point. Mm-hmm. There was a point where it looked like he was ready to take the next step. Okay, Brady was declining for a year, and Rodgers was kind of declining a little bit, and those guys are getting old anyway. Russ was ready to jump up into that next group, that tier with Mahomes, where it might have only been Mahomes for a short period of time. And for maybe a year and a half, that's what we saw from Russell Wilson. In the beginning of 2020, he had a 95 PFF grade, on pace to be the highest graded single season we've ever seen. For the first half of the year, he was on pace to set the touchdown record. He was on pace for a lot of stuff. And since that point, it's pretty much all fallen apart. So my big question is, was that just the ebbs and flows from a data perspective? He just had this high and he's just come back down to earth and he's still this tier 2 quarterback. When you balance it out, it's a tier 2 type of guy. Or did he legitimately drop off? Because the last year and a half, he's been ranked like between 15th and 20th in PFF grades. He's never been really that low for this long of a period of time. And then you say, okay, there was an injury in the middle of it last year. There was a new scheme in the middle of it last year. So how much do you attribute it to this other stuff, right? So which Russell Wilson are you getting? Because it really has been, over the last 3 years, night and day type of performance from Russ. One other question I have is, I think his athleticism probably looked a little bit off last year, right? Like he had lost a half step So if he loses the ability to maybe just escape, he wasn't escaping as many pockets. If he loses a half step of escapability, what does that do for Russell Wilson's game? Because that was part of what had always separated him and made him special.
One of the anonymous whatevers in Mike Sando's Quarterback Tiers article was talking about Russell needs to watch his weight. Getting a bit chunky.
I mean, don't we all? Don't we all?
Maybe. I mean, we're not putting $1 million a year into body recovery and whatever else he's doing.
That's true.
It feels like if I was spending that kind of money and had that kind of free time, I might not be struggling with the weight as much.
Was that his nice way of saying he'd lost half a step last year?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe those are the same thing.
Yeah.
I think I'm coming back, or I'm settling on the idea, though, of it being just a net massive win. And maybe there is, maybe we do have a ceiling to how good Russell Wilson can be because of the way he plays the game and the sort of limitations that he places on himself in terms of efficiency. But it doesn't matter. Like, it's still such a huge jump forward from where they've been that it's going to make them a contender.
Oh, look. So let me just finish the one last question about Russ, and then say, overall, Broncos fans should be happy. But I think he's got to answer these three questions, right? Like, what is he? Elite, tier 2? Is he really fallen off? Has he lost a half step? And then the other question about let Russ cook. Was Seattle not letting him cook because they knew something about him? They saw him in action. They thought this isn't the best for Russell Wilson, the quarterback, or was it just Pete Carroll's a dinosaur and conservative and he wants to run the ball, right? So we want to learn those things. Because it might not be the best thing to say, Russell Wilson, hey, go play the game like Tom Brady or Drew Brees or even Patrick Mahomes, right, where you start certain games by throwing the ball 20 times. Maybe that isn't the best way for Russell Wilson to succeed and stay healthy and move the ball. So those are three big question marks. All that said, he should be much better than what they've had in Denver the last few years. And now I think we will, unfortunately, Tim Patrick's hurt, but we will get to see the potential of your guy, Jerry Jeudy, and hopefully a healthy KJ Hamler and a healthier Cortland Sutton. That receiving core with Russell Wilson can be very, very good.
It's a tremendously fun receiving core. Obviously, the first three guys are the important ones. Tim Patrick hurt, but Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler should be the primary three players that are actually really well balanced as a group, as well as good and dangerous. Jerry Jeudy is the guy that wins with separation and route running and has shown that he wins a lot from the slot as well, which is handy. Cortland Sutton is the guy with the best X-receiver, sort of alpha number one type of skill set. And then KJ Hamler is just this incredible deep threat dynamo that can run deep, I think, outside as well as in the slot, but that's to be determined. You also have Kendall Hinton still on the roster after that the stint of playing quarterback that
Former
one
quarterback.
time.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think that man should have a lifetime roster spot for that game. Just he's always on the roster until he retires.
I like
and then they also have Travis Fulgham, who remember for like 4 weeks looked like New Hopkins, and then never again. Never saw him again.
Receiver evaluation just drives me crazy sometimes. Fulgham was a guy people kind of liked coming out of college, and he just wasn't good until that 4-week stretch, 5-week stretch with Philly, right? I mean, that was
Where
it.
he looked amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes with receivers, it's like, oh, this guy, he just needed an opportunity. All right, well.
And sometimes it's true, and then other times it just happens for 4 weeks, and then the guy disappears again.
It's an intriguing offense. Are there still questions about the offensive line, right? I mean, this is...
Well, I think they've done the perfect job of creeping back toward average and then a little bit beyond. Like, that should be a solid average offensive line. It's not going to be amazing, but it's a hell of a lot better than any that's been in front of Russell Wilson before.
I think Russ has certainly not had good offensive lines in Seattle. At the same time, even in the PFF system that does our best to separate the quarterback from the offensive line, he makes things a little bit more difficult the way he holds onto the ball.
Yeah.
So we will see if the pressure rate is still pretty high for Russell Wilson. The thing that would offset that, though, is if he does truly embrace a new offensive system with Nathaniel Hackett, right? Is this really going to be more Packers-y, quick passing game and all that stuff? And Rodgers holds the ball a lot too, but they have a percentage of plays where pressure is pretty much impossible in this system. The percentage of plays where the ball's just out so quick, doesn't matter who you have up front, and that's always kind of been the balance that Rodgers and the Packers have had. Quick passing game, but also the ability to get the ball down the field and make those special plays. I just want to see how Russ, manages that balance. That's always been one of the questions. Taking negative plays versus getting rid of the ball, but also having the ability to make the special that has made Russell Wilson special through the years.
Yeah, the bigger question to me is not like it's if he embraces that, what happens? I'm less interested in whether or not he'll actually do that, whether or not the offense will ask him to do that, but more if he does, and if Russell Wilson tries to play with more of this quick game stuff, is he efficient and good enough at that stuff to make it worth it? Because this is, I feel with Russell Wilson a little bit like I did with Cam Newton, which is in order to maximize the player they can be, and to be clear, I think Russell Wilson is a much better quarterback than Cam Newton was for his career.
Agreed.
But in order to maximize that player, I think you kind of have to lean into the unique aspects of how he plays rather than try and modify the way they play to sort of make up for the deficiencies. So the problem with Cam Newton was that he was a generally inaccurate quarterback. And this is true of Carson Wentz as well, which is, which doesn't mean that he can't, thread an absolute needle every now and again, or that he doesn't make amazing throws or all these things. It's that when you count up 600 dropbacks, he's going to have way more misses than Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or whoever, right? He's a more inaccurate quarterback than those guys. So for years, Carolina went through 3 or 4 different iterations of trying to go, well, okay, how do we make that better? Well, let's have him throw a whole bunch of shorter passes because those are higher completion rate and he'll be more accurate. But yeah, but the problem is it doesn't really actually make him more accurate. It just means that you're taking away how valuable each pass attempt is or reducing it. So overall, you're having the opposite effect of the one you want it to have. Same thing, which is like, let's feature Christian McCaffrey. Same idea, right? You're just making the throws less valuable. You're not actually changing how accurate he is. So with Russell Wilson, I think you have a similar deal, which is it's not that he's not accurate, but it's that he doesn't do as well with the quick game stuff and just isn't as efficient with that, whereas he's amazing. Probably he's the best deep ball thrower in the NFL. And he's very good at running around, buying time, finding himself a vision lane, and delivering a 50-yard strike to somebody. Now, if you try and lean into the quick game stuff, what you're doing is changing the balance between the really high-value plays that are not as efficient to ones that are more efficient, but he's not as good at. And I think overall that's a net loss to the general play of Russell Wilson.
That was always my question with like the analytics nerds, our friends, saying, hey, you got to let Russ cook, right? This theory of, well, when he passes, things are more efficient and they're better, therefore pass more. Is he more efficient per play? In part because Seattle always really played to his strengths for the most part. Let him run more play action. Let him run deeper routes down the field so that he could get the ball down the field. It's not as simple as just do that more often. You literally can't just throw deep passes all the time. You will get sacked 8 times a game. You will get killed. So you do have to find that balance. And the very best quarterbacks in NFL history, I think, have this incredible balance of quick game, intermediate game, deep game, play action, no play action. They were efficient on third down, efficient on early downs. They could really do it all and attack every which way. So can Russell Wilson round out his game here this year? From a backfield standpoint, we'll talk running backs for the first time in these previews maybe. Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. It seems like they're going to be a 1-2 punch, but I think we'll see a lot more of Javonte Williams this year because he is one of the best tackle breakers in the NFL already. So just keep an eye on that. That's the extent of our running back discussion.
Nice.
Defensively, will they miss Vic Fangio? I think is my other question.
Sure.
Because on paper, it looks pretty good. They've done some nice things in the secondary, expecting a big year from Patrick Surtain in year 2 here.
Yep.
Ronald Darby opposite him. But a big part of us liking Denver the last couple of years is Vic Fangio now has, maybe not his entire career, but his recent career is a pretty good run of elevating defenses. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of the NFL's trying to emulate what Vic Fangio's done defensively. So you lose that aspect of it. So we're looking at the players, and they've generally performed pretty well the last couple of years, but you're losing a defensive coordinator who was the head coach, and that's going to be a factor as well.
Yeah, I think it will. I think there are enough elements on this defense that should be better this year that it might offset that and be okay. Obviously, we're expecting this breakout season from Patrick Surtain. I think there's reason to expect that to happen, given what he showed as a rookie. The other thing I think that has the chance to be a lot better is we might get some real pass rush for the first time since trading away Von Miller, essentially. And even with Von Miller, it had been he'd been injured and he hadn't been himself for a while. We hadn't really seen the true Von Miller, but they won the Randy Gregory offseason drama. You know, Dallas screwed up the contract. Denver jumped in, got him. So Randy Gregory comes in. Now, look, Randy Gregory isn't without questions, but the last thing we saw was him being a really high-level pass rusher. Bradley Chubb may never become that guy, but they drafted Nick Bonito, who was one of my favorite players in the draft, has the best 2-year pass rushing profile of any pass rusher in this draft class. When you look at his tape, he's so quick, so fluid of movement. He has the closest kind of, you know, inside moves and swerves to Von Miller in this draft class. Now, he's not going to be Von Miller, but there's every chance that Nick Bonito can come in and be, you know, the designated pass rusher alongside Randy Gregory and make a real impact.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by what they do from a pass rush standpoint as well. You know, with Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, and Bonito, as you mentioned, Malik Reed, they've got some pieces to maybe move around there. The defensive line looks solid, unspectacular. Their strength would have to be in the secondary, though. You have Kareem Jackson's getting kind of old there at safety. I don't know if he's what he has left, but him and Justin Simmons, Surtain, Ronald Darby, K'Wan Williams have been one of the best slots in the league over the last couple of years. So decent pieces, I think, there for the Broncos. Their whole season, I mean, I think they're better. You know, they're a better team. Their whole season is going to come down to like a few plays here and there, right? I think they're going to play some close games in the division, and it's all we're going to talk about today is how both of the West divisions are so tough. Are the Broncos going to be one of those teams that's very good? They're better. They're solid across the board. They've upgraded a quarterback, but they're the team that comes out with only 8 or 9 wins. It could be.
I mean, I think they'll be good enough that they're in the playoffs. The concern for them is going to be the stuff we're talking about with Russell Wilson. Like, where does he land on that scale between good, very good, and amazing, all of which he's capable of? That's the difference between the playoffs and winning, and a genuine Super Bowl contender. Because just the way the AFC is right now, I don't know that you can win by just being good. You know, like, so. Yeah. Like,
over-under's 10, by the way. We're looking at 10 wins, DraftKings.com. 10 wins is the over-under for Denver right now.
Even last year, look at the way the playoffs panned out in the AFC. Like, Justin Herbert playing out of his freaking mind, couldn't even get in. You got Joe Burrow playing incredibly. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen dueling as one of the most insane games that the NFL has ever seen. Eventually, they lose out to Joe Burrow. Like, if you had just a standard good quarterback, say Ryan Tannehill, you know, like if you were one of those teams that had a Ryan Tannehill, or if you transplanted Kirk Cousins into the AFC playoff picture, I mean, forget about it. You couldn't win. And I think we're looking at the same thing. Like, Denver just got Russell Wilson. That puts them back in the playoffs in my eyes. You go from Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater to Russell Wilson, you're back in playoff contention. But playoff contention versus can you win a Super Bowl is, well, can you go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow? Because that's not going anywhere. In fact, if anything, it's getting harder. So that, I think, is what's going to determine their season.
So what do you think? Over or under 10 here for the Broncos?
I keep wanting to give them the number that the over-under is. What happened to half games to stop that happening? They'll win 10 games. Therefore,
push. Don't take it.
Yeah.
Wow. If I have to go over or under, I think I'd lean under here for the Broncos.
Yeah, well, I would as well, but I don't think they'll go under. I think they'll go 10.
I think they'll win 10.
Yes.
They just feel like a good 10-7 team.
Uh-huh.
They could also go over. Just saying.
They could.
All right. We're going to move on to the Kansas City Chiefs. But first, gentlemen, all men strive for gold in their life, right? Gold medals, gold watches, gold everything. However, there's a certain type of man who goes the extra mile. He walks the confidence of an eagle and giggles in the face of danger. He's a big, hairless winning machine. And when he unzips his pants, he sees platinum, Sam. That's right, the Manscaped. They would like to introduce you to your best and biggest ultimate hygiene bundle yet, the Platinum Package 4.0. I'll just redo the read without the stutter. Don't worry about it. We'll fix it.
Perfect.
Manscaped is the leader in below-the-waist grooming. Now trust them with the whole shebang. Now join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF. Manscaped's brand new Platinum Package 4.0 is the biggest bundle they've ever offered, giving you a bulk discount on Manscaped's top products. Whoever set up this sheet.
They sent us an awesome care package of all
They
this
sent
stuff.
us all of the stuff over here at PFF offices. You could get 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. I'll let Sam show everything in a second here. It's 20% off plus free shipping with manscaped.com. Use the code PFF. It's time you enjoyed the finer things in life and get yourself a platinum package for your platinum package.
We've got hydrating body spray here, which I think is deodorant.
I didn't see that. I'll take that home.
We got this thing.
Is that what you're taking home?
The Ultra Smooth package, which has crop exfoliator, gentle exfoliant for the groin area, crop gel, the crop shaver.
Did you grab this?
I thought I did, but I don't see it anywhere.
You grabbed the shampoo and conditioner.
And then we got this thing, which got all kinds of stuff in it. Like a giant box full of stuff. Where's my camera? Where's my solo, my close up?
Hey, camera one. We get camera
cool
one on
stuff in
Sam.
here. So awesome from Manscaped. They hooked us up. And look, there's another one of the great travel bags in here, which I now have 3
That's your
of.
favorite, yeah, the travel bag.
I got 3 of these things.
I will try the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner.
I think you should.
So I got that coming home with me. So go check it out, manscaped.com. Promo code is PFF. All right, we're on to the Chiefs.
The chefs.
The chefs. Great googly moogly. All right, let's go. Let's go Chiefs here, man. What's going to happen this year? Over-under is probably 100 for the Chiefs. People still believe in.
Yeah, which they should.
Tyreek Hill's the story.
Right. It's
10.5.
Same story
there's
minus
your half
Tyreek Hill. What does it look like? That's the Chiefs in a nutshell.
Look, I don't want to exhaust a lot of our offseason conversation, but in a nutshell, I think Tyreek Hill, special receiver, what he does production-wise, what he does for the offense. We've never seen Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill plus Travis Kelce for an extended period of time. The most uncoverable receiver, uncoverable tight end of their era. I think that's how I would describe both of those guys. So we've never seen it for an extended period of time. It doesn't mean that Patrick Mahomes isn't special or that he can't be awesome without them, but he's going to have to play better. I mean, just for the offense to maintain, like they have to get worse probably before they get better, don't they?
Well, they need to show that they can play in a way that they don't like playing. So the Chiefs have had one of the most explosive offenses, as well as just one of the best since Patrick Mahomes came into the lineup. And that's also with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and all that together. Now teams have started to show them something that takes that away. You know, the 2 high coverage shells that we saw so much last year that were essentially there because of Tyreek Hill. Those cause Kansas City problems. Now, look, problems is a relative term. They still led the NFL in EPA per play. They still arguably had the best offense in the league. But you could see that they were visibly caused issues by those defenses. And they would start games with the perfect patient offense and marching methodically down the field like vintage Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, and then they'd make a mistake. And when they made the mistake, you could see them all tighten up and more mistakes would follow and it would get worse. So they did a good job of modifying the offense. As I said, it was still successful, and Tyreek Hill's average at the target tumbled, and they were using him more as an underneath sort of lateral weapon. But now they need to do it again without Tyreek Hill, and they need to show that they can do it without making the mistakes, because those are important. Again, we're talking fine margins. This is a Super Bowl contending team, so those mistakes are going to be the difference between winning and losing in crunch time against those juggernauts in the AFC. So I want to see, have they figured out over the course of the offseason how to do that game plan, which was fine, but not screw up, like execute it without making mistakes.
I'm going to say they're not going to need to execute that game plan as much. Okay, let me pose this question to you. Were teams playing softer coverages because they want to make Patrick Mahomes more conservative and more patient, and they think that's the way you attack Patrick Mahomes? Or was it because they just didn't want to try to match up with Tyreek Hill and his speed, and they're worried about the deep ball? It can be a combination of both, but I think the Chiefs might still they might go back to a whole bunch of single coverage, and I might look at this Chiefs receiving core this year and say, I'll take my chances playing man. You know, I'm not that afraid of. Maybe I'll be more afraid of Sky Moore when we see more from him and Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster. But I think more teams are going to say, sure, we can match up with these guys. We'll keep a safety over the top for Valdez-Scantling, and we'll give a little extra help to Travis Kelce underneath, maybe a lot more attention to Travis Kelce and make the receivers beat us. But we might see more man coverage. So did defenses make the Chiefs play that way because they wanted Mahomes to play this patient game. He had the 4th lowest average depth of target in the NFL last year. Patrick Mahomes. Lower average depth of target than Rodgers has ever had, than Brady has ever had, all of that stuff. It was a dink and dunk offense because of the way defenses played them. So will teams still attack them the same way or say, we're not afraid of this receiving core anymore. Let's go challenge them?
No, I think they start off playing the same defenses. I think it did start because of Tyreek Hill and, the Mahomes connection. It's not like Tyreek Hill just on his own does that.
Of course.
But I think that's why they started it. But as the year wore on, it became very clear that this is working. Like, this is causing them issues. Therefore, let's keep doing it until it stops causing them issues. I mean, the problem before that is that literally nobody had any idea how to defend the Chiefs. It's like, what do? We're doomed either way. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Eventually, we found out that this is a way that does take a little something off that offense. So keep doing it until they show that they're better at doing that than they are at the other stuff. And even if you don't have Tyreek Hill, I think they see the same defenses. I do think that that without Tyreek Hill, the only team that didn't show them these kinds of defenses last year were the Raiders twice, and they just barbecued the Raiders.
Got torched.
So I don't think you're going back even without Tyreek Hill.
The offense was still very good last year overall. Just wasn't the same level that we had expected from the Chiefs previously. The overhaul in the offensive line absolutely worked. They were fantastic. Here's my big question with Mahomes in general. Will this make him a better quarterback, not having Tyreek Hill? We've seen historically, I've mentioned this a couple shows ago, I think, the Patriots traded Randy Moss and Tom Brady won MVP with Deion Branches as number 1 wide receiver and rookie tight ends. We saw Calvin Johnson leave and Matthew Stafford changed his game a little bit, spread the ball around. Will this help Patrick Mahomes, be less locked into just 2 targets like he has been most of his career? Not because he can't do it, but because those are the best targets. You should be locked into those 2 targets. Will this help him spread the ball around a little bit more, play in rhythm a touch more? He doesn't, he could play in rhythm a little bit better, Mahomes. He's still very good when he does it, but there's certainly times when he prefers to play outside of structure. So those are my questions. But the O-line's intact. I think they'll protect him really well. Orlando Brown on the franchise tag has come back. The question offensively on the O-line is right tackle. They've kind of had a revolving door in camp. Jerron Christian seeing time there. Lucas Niang, Darian Kennard. So we don't know who the right tackle is, but I think 4/5 of that line's looking really good with Trey Smith at right guard, Creed Humphrey at center, Joe Thuney at left guard, and Orlando Brown at left tackle.
Yeah.
A lot of good. The offensive line was one of the best last year. They'll run the ball well enough because they did have those light boxes. That's why they were so efficient on the ground, whether it is Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jerick McKinnon, who looked so dynamic when they put him in there. So it's not bleak with Kansas City, but there are some questions about who's able to step up. Because the bottom line is, like, that big comeback that they made against the Bills was a little crossing route to Tyreek Hill where he just outruns the defense. I'm not saying that happens in every single game, but the potential was always there in every single game for Tyreek to just, look, there's a 75-yarder. Look, there's a 65-yarder, and the Chiefs are right back in it. They are going to lose some of that aspect unless other guys step up.
Their backfield is fun. You got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was the first-round pick that was criticized at the time, but even at the time was thought, hey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this offense could do insane things just because of the situation. He's never really done it, but they bring in Ronald Jones. The one thing you can say about Ronald Jones is that he does run the ball well and tends to maximize the blocking, which is fantastic given the offensive line they had. Jerick McKinnon, as you said, now that he's finally healthy, looked a bit more like the player that he once was when he was given a big contract. And then their rookie, Isaiah Pacheco, has been getting a ton of training camp hype. Like, he's been the guy that's getting all the buzz, and maybe he could steal a job. And all of a sudden, see, the thing about the Chiefs running back situation is it is an incredible situation. Okay, they're not going to run as much as other teams, but when they do run, it's massively advantageous, and the blocking is great, and yet the running backs haven't really done a whole lot. If they get a guy that actually shows up and is generating more yardage than the blocking is giving him, that guy could have a field day.
We have someone in the chat reminding you that Sky Moore can also play running back, Sam. They're using him, getting him in space with some jet sweeps and all that fun stuff. So, look, there are playmakers in Kansas City. I think they're just down the best playmaker in the NFL. Now, as we said at draft time, or when the trade happened, even if the offense takes a step back, the long-term effect of saving probably $30 million on the cap per year and the 5 draft picks that came back for Tyreek Hill probably give the Chiefs a chance to just be better over time. And we already saw some of that defensively. They had 2 first-round picks. You had Trent McDuffie at corner. You have George Karlaftis on the defensive line at edge. Edge was a massive issue with them last year when Frank Clark was hurt. Chris Jones, interior player, moves to the edge. He was still good, but it ruined the entire defense. They got crushed up front. So this defensive line, just on paper, looks this much better with Karlaftis coming in. Frank Clark, our friend Greg Rosenthal, had all sorts of his nuggets from camp. He's buying into the Frank Clark, is in shape and ready to go. You know, Frank Clark has been not good for the Chiefs for all the money, but let's not forget, he used to be a very good player. Like, he used to be a very good player for the Seahawks. He's probably 3 years removed from that, but if he's rejuvenated with Karlaftis, Chris Jones in the interior, could be a much improved unit up there.
I just really want to see the rookies. Kansas City had this draft where it looked like they were just reading off the PFF big board. You know, every player they took was a massive steal, according to the PFF big board. Now, there's data out there that says there is no such thing as a steal in draft terms, right? These guys that are lower, the guys that get drafted lower than the consensus would have them are taken lower for a reason, and they don't appear as steals down the line, statistically, right? Not that, you know, Tom Brady in the 6th round wasn't a steal, but that generally speaking, if you're looking at a board and saying all these players are value relative to this board, that doesn't become a thing. That's not a way of predicting success. So we love George Karlaftis. We love Trent McDuffie. Do they work out year one? Karlaftis in particular was the guy that got overlooked when it came to pass rushers this draft season. Everyone was focusing on Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson. You know, if you're going beyond those, suddenly you got to the kind of tier 2 guys, and everyone like bypassed Karlaftis in the middle, who was like 1.5. You know, he's not in the Aiden Hutchinson conversation. He wasn't in the conversation for number 1 overall, but he's better than the tier 2 guys, and yet we just sort of ignored him. So I think there's a pretty good chance he steps in as immediately their best pass rusher.
He's a power player. He's more of a power player, less explosive than some of those other guys. Sometimes those guys do get overlooked.
But I think he's also pretty good from a sort of technical, fundamental standpoint.
For sure.
Like you're right. He wins a lot by power, but he wins. You know, He'll get pressure in a way that Frank Clark hasn't been, and in a way that Carlos Dunlap might not be capable of doing anymore.
I'm intrigued by the linebackers, too. Nick Bolton looked very good last year as a rookie. Willie Gay Jr. He's just such an interesting player. He makes some of the most amazing plays I've ever seen in coverage. And even when you just hear camp reports, it's like, hey, Willie Gay broke up a pass again. He'll be caught out of position at other times, but he just kind of like gets his hands on passes and has incredible short area range as a coverage player. I could see Willie Gay taking a big step forward. And then in the secondary, you do have to you lose Tyrann Mathieu, who I think has always just made defenses better when he's around. But bringing in Justin Reed, Juan Thornhill still there at safety. Look, they could be solid defensively. And I think in the Mahomes era, that has always been the question for the Chiefs. His MVP caliber season, they were terrible, right? Every time, if they'd give up 30 pretty often, and those are all the games that they lost, the defense got better and they won a Super Bowl. It got better and they went to the Super Bowl. You know, they've been up and down, you know, throughout the Spags era. So if they could be, you know, middle of the pack, I think that's always the question for the Chiefs. For all the questions we have on the offense, you still expect them to be good. Will the defense at least creep back toward average and be in that middle tier, and that'll give the Chiefs a chance?
Yeah. Ultimately, I think, you know, they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. They still might have the best offense in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes plus Andy Reid plus, you know, enough other pieces means they're in the playoffs and probably winning a game or two.
I'm going to go over the 10.5.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think, last question, the last time we saw Patrick Mahomes, just crazy, man. It looked like he was going to be on another epic playoff run after beating the Bills, crushed the Steelers. They beat the Bills. First half, they're crushing the Bengals, and it was one of the worst halves of play in NFL history in the playoffs. I mean, it really was an absolute collapse, and it was mostly Mahomes in the offense. That was the collapse. Taking sacks, fumbles, turnovers, all of it was bad. Any residual effect from that?
I don't think so. I don't think that's damaging long term to him or the offense. Like sometimes losses can do that where they leave a mark and you don't get over that kind of thing. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I do think that it's, again, teams have gotten just the NFL generally is a good system at evolving and developing game plans to stop whatever's working. And Mahomes and a couple of other quarterbacks in the NFL are living that right now, which is, yeah, you came in, you had a record-setting pace, you did things we've never seen before, and you just set fire to the place. But since that point, we're evolving. We figured out not how to stop you, but how to at least make you uncomfortable and how to cause some problems that weren't there in the past where we were just like desperately searching for anything. And I think Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and, Josh Allen, I think is probably about to run into this. But that kind of quarterback is now dealing with, all right, now I need to counter the counter. That's what he's dealing with now.
It's really what makes great players great. Mahomes wasn't bad by any stretch last year, but it was his worst season, combined with schematic adjustments against the Chiefs. So the great players sustain greatness for 10 to 15 years, right? They do it for an extended period of time. So there will be some adjustments here for Mahomes and the Chiefs. I'm going to go over, though, on the 10.5, just like you are, right? Is that what we said?
Yep.
All right, let's go Las Vegas Raiders. Another team, a lot of turnover this offseason, a lot of excitement. Their over-under is 8.5. And again, the Chargers are probably going to be higher than that. I haven't looked at it specifically, but 8.5 for probably the team that most would expect is going to be last in the division. Is that fair to the Raiders? I mean, that's what the totals are going to say, right?
Know.
Chargers are over under 10. So it's not PFF saying this, Raiders fans. Everybody's expecting the Raiders to be the worst team in this division.
And Denver were at 10.
Denver's at 10. So the top three teams are over 10. 10.5 is their over under. The Raiders are at 8.5.
Yeah. So
people are expecting the Raiders to be the worst team. Last year, they did make the playoffs. They did beat out the Chargers for the playoffs. It did feel like on one hand, it felt like they overachieved, just using simple measures, points for, points against, this and that. It felt like the Raiders overachieved to make the playoffs. On the other hand, they dealt with their head coach getting fired, the Henry Ruggs incident. They dealt with so much off the field. Really impressive job by the Raiders to get it together and get the defense playing better than expected, except against the Chiefs, getting a lot of pieces in place and Max Crosby breaking out. There was a lot to be excited about for the Raiders last year. There's a lot to be excited about this year. Josh McDaniels comes in. Devontae Adams comes in to be buddies with Derek Carr. So there's a lot of potential for this Raiders team, and the thing that could thwart it is the actual division and the teams that they have to play.
The division and the offensive line.
And the line.
I love what they did this offseason. They were in a really tough spot because Denver go and bring in a great quarterback. The Chargers already have a great quarterback, and they load up anyway. The Chiefs were already so far ahead of everybody else they could afford to trade away a guy and just rely on the draft and having the advantage they already had. So the Raiders are looking at this and saying, well, all right, what do we do? You can't start over from Derek Carr. He's too good. We know he's capable of really high-level play, and the chances of us getting rid of him and finding somebody in the gap between Derek Carr and the other three guys in the division is pretty small. So let's just embrace Derek Carr and try and help him out. Like go and trade for Devontae Adams, go and bring in Chandler Jones as a pass rushing upgrade. It's about all they could do. And, Adams has the potential to have the kind of impact on this offense that Jamar Chase had last year for the Bengals, which is you bring in an elite number one receiver that can win in all ways. And that obviously helps the offense by whatever that addition is. But it also makes life easier for Hunter Renfrow. It makes life easier for Darren Waller. It makes life easier for the running backs, Josh Jacobs, whoever they end up using primarily there. It makes everybody's life easier, including, by the way, the offensive line to a degree, and obviously Derek Carr. So that can have an absolutely transformative effect. The only question is it enough that the offensive line can just keep its head above water? Because you've got Colton Miller, who's become a very good left tackle, and then really 4 question marks. And
4 guys. For the 5 guys that are in the mix to start, or 6 guys, there's 1 rookie in Dylan Parham. We'll see if he gets a shot. The other guys in line to start, all below average. PFF grades, WAR, everything last year.
Yeah, and Alex Leatherwood was catastrophic as a rookie. Gave up the most pressure of any offensive lineman in the NFL. They don't need that offensive line to be good. They just need it to not be that bad. And, Devontae Adams and the offense being better will help, but it might not be enough to offset how bad it can be. And again, this is not like, is the offense so bad that the Raiders will stink? No. But is the offense so bad that they might not be able to keep pace with the other three teams in this brutal division? Yeah.
If I knew that they had an average offensive line, if they could get these guys to play at an average level, and you never know with the scheme change, and some of them are young, and but as you mentioned, question marks, right? Like when we evaluate offensive lines, it's like how many are dependable, how many guys are dependable, how many have we just not seen it yet? And most of the good offensive lines have 3 or 4 dependable players, and the Raiders right now literally have one, and that's Colton Miller, who has turned his career around. So you need other guys to turn their career around like Colton Miller. But I also don't think, I keep talking myself into the Raiders throughout the offseason. It's not that far-fetched. I think there are a lot of similarities between Derek Carr and Matthew Stafford. I think guys who are in the probably high third-tier quarterbacks for the majority of their career. That's QB 10 to 14 at any given time in the NFL. I think that's a fair assessment of Derek Carr against the landscape of NFL quarterbacks. I think that's a fair assessment of Matthew Stafford against his era of quarterbacks, QB 10, QB 11. And when you get that guy, if you do have a Devontae Adams, or much like Stafford, you do put him in this Rams team where him and Cooper Kupp just take it to a whole new level, and you have a good offensive system, presumably with Josh McDaniels coming in, that's going to help. That's a guy I think you can win with, right? Like you could take Derek Carr, let's call him QB 10, and get QB 5 type of production out of him. Especially if Devontae Adams is as special as he's played these last couple of years, even without Aaron Rodgers. We're looking at teams have to try to cover Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. Waller is one of the 5 tight ends that I think, is an absolute mismatch weapon around the NFL. Hunter Renfrow, a fantastic complementary piece. My old friend Mac Hollins is seeing first-team reps for the Raiders. That might not be good for the Raiders in the depth chart, but I liked Mac Hollins like 7 years ago, so that's fun. Anyway, I just think we could see Derek Carr, if the offensive line can just hold up, we could see Derek Carr put up huge numbers, have a career year. We could be talking about him in the MVP race, but it is, as I've said, one of the stories of the season. How does Devontae Adams, how does a wide receiver 1 elevate an offense? I don't know if we'll truly see it this year just because of the offensive line. But it could be like, give the Raiders one more year, focus on the line, and next year they're going to be crazy dangerous.
Yeah,
but they'll be tough to beat this year, though.
Thing is, that line was bad last year, and they ranked 17th in offense in terms of EPA per play. So if Devontae Adams takes 17th, if he makes a 10-spot difference to that, all of a sudden they're 7th and they're in a really good spot. And that's just Devontae Adams. Even if the offensive line is no better than it was a year ago, if the offensive line is slightly better, I think that's eminently achievable. So I think ultimately the offensive line kind of places a cap on how good this team can be, but I think it can be really good. I think that offense in particular can be pretty special. Then the defense still has a ton of holes, but they have very good players at a couple of important positions. The Max Crosby, Chandler Jones combination, could be one of the best pass rushing duos in the league, even if Jones is declining a bit. The decline is coming largely, I think, in just not defending the run anymore and selling out for the pass. Crosby was incredible last year, led the NFL in pressures against generally a really bad slate of offensive tackles. He'll have a tougher job this year, but he looks legit. Nate Hobbs has been getting a ton of hype in training camp, a guy who graded really well as a rookie. They've been saying he's going one-on-one with Devontae Adams and holding his own, which is about as high a compliment as you're going to get. If Nate Hobbs turns out to be legit after, year 1, that's a huge boost to the secondary. The Raiders' defense, I think, will be the weakest area, but could be okay.
Yeah, with the defense, they bring in Patrick Graham to run the defense. It's always tough to predict what certain defensive coordinators are going to do and easier to predict others. When Gus Bradley was there, he's the easiest to predict. So when you move him around the league, it's like, I know what he's going to do, and I know which players generally succeed in his defense. A guy like Nate Hobbs playing in the slot in Gus Bradley's defense, it's kind of an easier role from a grading standpoint, so that will be a test for Hobbs in a new system. But Patrick Graham, when he was with the Giants, he was a guy who stitched together some good defenses without a ton of talent, right? Without a team that he never had great pass rushers with the Giants. He had a different style of defensive line where he was stout on the interior and weaker on the edge. It's the inverse here. with the Raiders. Graham got the most out of their secondary, I think, with the Giants, as they were never great there, but they had some solid players. So I'm intrigued by what he can do. I think it's going to be tough to just have a consistently good defense, though, for the Raiders. But I think Graham has shown one-off situations like other defenses, you can kind of put together a good game plan, have some good games. They had a really good game against the Chiefs last year with the Giants. And that might have been part of bringing him over and having a strategy to beat the Chiefs in that division. So I'm intrigued by a lot of what the Raiders can do. But I honestly think the biggest story here is, of course, it's Carr and Adams, but it's what that O-line does to hold up front. I also wonder if they're a type of team, if you want to win this year, nothing against John Simpson and Lester Cotton and all the guys that they have there. Leatherwood, we have no idea what's going to happen there. Brandon Parker. Are they a waiver wire cut, type of team? There's probably a wave of cuts around the NFL where there are veterans that you could bring in and plug and play and upgrade that line.
Well, there's also guys available. We were messaging yesterday when it looked like Robert Hainsey might be down in the same way that Ryan Jensen had gone down.
It
turned out it was just bad cramps. But for a moment, you're like, okay, the Bucs just lost 2 centers. J.C. Treader is sitting out there available on the free agent market. J.C. Treader is probably still a top 10 center in the NFL. Okay, I'm sure there's a contractual reason he's still sitting around, in terms of what money he wants. But, you could sign players that can come in and be better than the ones you have.
So what do you think with the Raiders here? I mean, the more I talk about the Raiders, the more intrigued I am. We haven't talked about Josh McDaniels specifically. You've mentioned him a lot throughout the offseason. The last time we saw him as a head coach was 2009 and 10 with the Denver Broncos. He's a different person, different coach, we assume. He's learned from completely blowing things up. He's got his GM, Dave Ziegler, comes over from the Patriots. I kind of like the direction they're going to be going. I have faith in the direction they're going to be going. I just don't know how much we're going to be able to see this year because of some of the holes from the previous regime.
McDaniels, to me, is just a really interesting watch. His previous head coaching tenure was disastrous. You would have to assume he's learned from that. He also, in between the last time and this time, got himself, into trouble in terms of PR, I guess, in terms of pissing off people in the league with the whole, I'm going to go with the Colts and be their head coach, and then reneging on that and, going back to New England. This is a big deal for him. If he doesn't get it right this time, he's probably not getting another shot at this. So if he wants to be a successful head coach, it's now or never. And you've chosen coming into this just murderer's row of a division to get that done. Okay, confidence in Derek Carr is probably a big reason he did. But I also think, I don't know how many opportunities Josh McDaniel was going to get if he didn't take this one. So I just think generally he's a guy to watch. How does he behave? How does he do it differently than last year? What is it? What lessons has he learned? And then can he propel the whole thing forward just by virtue of being an offensive mind and a guy that has, a good system and all this kind of stuff?
Where do you land with the Raiders? Over, under 8.5.
Yeah, to me, the Raiders, I think Vegas has it right in terms of one team in this division is not going to win as many games as they should based off the talent level because of the other 3 teams in the division. And if you're picking one, I think you would immediately default to the guy that's probably the worst quarterback of the 4 in most given years. There might be a year where Derek Carr is the second best quarterback in the division. But if you were betting heading into the year, every single year, you would say he's the 4th best.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of player evaluation and all that stuff, right? Like, Derek Carr has been a better quarterback than Russell Wilson for the last year and a half.
Right.
For the majority of their respective careers, Russell Wilson, of course, has been the better quarterback. So what does that mean for 2022 going forward?
So I think ultimately Vegas is right in terms of if you're playing the percentages, you pick the Raiders to have the worst record of the 4 and be the team that looks relatively disappointing based off, last year or expectations or whatever. 8.5, you said?
8.5, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the under and say they win 8, I guess.
I'm going to go over for the Raiders. I think I'm more buying into the Raiders. I've been suckered into buying into the Raiders and kind of being down on the Broncos more. And I think you're the reverse on
certainly
those 2.
Lately.
lately. We've had 6 months to just dissect all of this stuff. So I've come around to being a little bit more bullish on the Raiders and bearish on the Broncos. Let's go to the Chargers, where I think we're all optimistic because it's the offseason.
Yeah, well,
that's what you do.
That's where you are
with the Chargers. Chargers, the sleeper Super Bowl team since 2006.
If you do it the way that everybody else works, which is, you take last year's record and you just see where they've made additions or subtractions, therefore what
they have to be better.
Well, that's where it makes sense for everybody to almost accept the Chargers, right? Look at the Raiders. They won 10 games last year.
Yeah.
So 8.5 is an insult. Denver, though, they won 7 games, and they had terrible quarterbacks. So now you give them Russell Wilson. They should win double-digit games as well. The Chargers only won 9 games last season. And, okay, they've made a ton of additions, but, they're the team if you're the Raiders and you want to be insulted by somebody being ranked ahead of you in terms of a preseason win-loss record. The Broncos, I think, make sense because they added the most important position in the NFL. The Chargers, they didn't. They already had the elite quarterback, and they still couldn't beat them for the playoff spot.
So everything has to be better for the Chargers this year, right? Remember last year, we've got Brandon Staley comes in, goes for it on every single fourth down. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Mm-hmm. Some of them led to games where they got crushed, like the Ravens, because they were going for it in their own territory and not getting it. Other games, you had the Chiefs game where they failed 4 times, and everybody's like, just kick a field goal, you would have won before this game went to overtime. Other times it worked, but we didn't focus on that as much just because it worked. So we have an aggressive play caller. We have Justin Herbert, who just graded at 90, was number 3 in PFF WAR last year, built on that rookie season. He did not regress, as maybe some of the data points suggested he could. He looked even more special last year. I think the Justin Herbert question is, can we tap into the special a little bit more? The guy's got an incredible arm, but maybe throws the ball underneath too much when he's got Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, who's emerged as he's just a big-bodied down-the-field threat. Jalen Guyton can get down the field. So they've got pieces. Add Gerald Everett at tight end. They did a great job last year, the Chargers, having their offensive line. Talk about creep back toward average. They nailed it, right? They go from one of the worst in Herbert's rookie year. This is probably a big part, Sam, of why what mitigated any regression from Justin Herbert. You draft a Rashawn Slater in the first round. You bring in Matt Filer. Bring in Corey Linsley, 2 guys in free agency who are very good. So a lot of good moves from the Chargers the last year. But it's got to show up in wins. Because this year, the defense got gashed against the run. You bring in Khalil Mack. You bring in another turnover machine at corner and J.C. Jackson. A lot of flashy moves here for the Chargers to go with a flashy quarterback in Justin Herbert. But can they put it all together is the big question.
Yeah. I think the most noteworthy additions to this team have been the ones on defense, or the most noteworthy changes. One, we expect Brandon Staley's defense to be better than it was last year. When you come over from the number 1 defense in the NFL as a defensive-minded head coach, okay, one that has some offensive history as well, but you come over as a defensive head coach, you're expected to have a better defense than they did last year. They are a team that is in a tough spot in terms of balance between what the data and the analytics says, which is running the ball is less efficient than passing the ball. Therefore, if you're defense, you should want teams to run the ball on you because it's less efficient than if they're passing all over you. The problem is if you lean too hard into that, you become too easy to run against and you start changing the dynamic there. And that's what happened with the Chargers last year. Along with Buffalo, they were 2 teams that I think leaned heavily into this idea of letting teams run on them deliberately. But unlike Buffalo, they were bad at it. So when teams did lean into the running on them, they were giving up 6-7 yards a carry, and all of a sudden you start to equalize how efficient it is between running and passing on you. Now this offseason, you look at all the additions they brought in to that defense, I think all of them should change that. Khalil Mack, we talk about him and what he's going to be as a pass rusher with Joey Bosa, and that should be great. But Khalil Mack is arguably the best run-defending edge rusher of the last decade.
Yep.
All of a sudden, he's changing that aspect of things. Sebastian Joseph-Day, Austin Johnson, guys they brought in the middle, those guys have got the ability to be much better against the run than the players they're replacing. So 3 potential upgrades to the defensive front just in terms of stopping the run. Forget what they're going to do in the pass game. That should be huge for changing that balance. They might still lean into the idea of inviting teams to run on them, but all of a sudden it's going to be less effective. They're not going to be giving up 6-7 yards a carry. They're going to be giving up 4 or 5, which is where it is. It is more efficient. And then obviously the splash play in the secondary, bringing in J.C. Jackson. And what I really like about that is I think the conscious plan there is let's assemble a bunch of guys that have ball skills, a bunch of guys that aren't just going to cover people or break up passes, but are going to turn it over. Because if we can get, a bunch of turnovers from these guys, it's going to offset a lot of, catches that they give up.
This is what's really interesting, right? Because like the analytical way of looking at turnovers is you can't
rely on them. They're unstable. They come and go. Like the Trayvon Diggs thing. He got 11 last year. He'll get 4 this year.
You can't, right? You can't just rely on turnovers. And I laugh every year, right? There's the story. Like, why do the Bears have all these turnovers this particular season? Oh, they practice it, right? Like, every team practices forcing fumbles and this and that. Maybe some teams practice it a little bit more, but there's not a direct correlation with emphasizing it and executing. However, I do wonder if there's a team-building strategy, right? Do you turn the ball over more when you play zone or man? Zone, right? Mm-hmm. So this is one of the most zone-heavy teams in the NFL. So that's one, like, little edge if you're just trying to steal turnovers. What else can you do? You have certain profiles of players. Asante Samuel, he'll get beat a little bit. Like his father, he'll get beat, but the dude breaks on the ball and makes plays. J.C. Jackson has a history of getting the ball, right? So maybe you could steal a little bit with some players. And this is, to me, this is the storyline with the Chargers. For a team that's going to go for it on 4th down more than anyone, and for a team that's trying to emphasize turnovers a little bit in style, are they just going to steal extra possessions? So even if they get run on, even if you do get, give up 5 yards a pop or whatever it is, are they going to be a team that's just going to have more possessions for this explosive offense? Because I think there's kind of an analytical approach to like, hey, if we have Justin Herbert, we're just going to give him more opportunities, more 4th downs, more turnovers. It's a strategy that I'm looking forward to see if the Chargers can pull this off.
Yeah, I don't think you can practice your way into more turnovers. But I think if you play a ton of zone coverage and you get a bunch of guys in the secondary that are natural ball hawks with good ball skills, you can probably get more turnovers that way.
Yeah, and you probably get more turnovers when you have a better pass rush and having Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa together. Like there's these like little edges that can add up. And what happens with turnovers, the 2009 Saints, like the one year that Drew Brees won the Super Bowl, the Saints were just ridiculous at turning the ball over. You just run into that one year where you're just a turnover machine as a team, and that's how you make a Super Bowl run, right? It's tough to have – you can only put the pieces in place to have sustained success, and then you have that peak year where it all comes together. And I feel like the Chargers have all of those pieces in place to have that – to be good, but also have that run to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And if you look, it helps things so much. Like – the Dallas last year is a great example. That defense took a huge step forward relative to where it was a season ago, in large part because they suddenly started forcing an absolute boatload of turnovers. Trayvon Diggs with his 11 of them for a start. And again, Diggs was one of the best corners in the NFL in terms of the results. What is the EPA per play on passes that target Trayvon Diggs, even though he gave up 1,000 yards? And even if you want to take a little bit of a percentage off that because of the way that we assign those stats and, when you factor in the penalties as well, whatever. Like, no matter what way you shake it out, when you net it all out, because of 11 turnovers, Trayvon Diggs was one of the best corners in the league in terms of the impact that actually had on the defense. But we know that that's relatively unsustainable. It's certainly on an individual level. But what happens if you have 4 guys in the secondary that are all like that, stylistically? Maybe one of them doesn't get any interceptions next year, but the other 3 might. And if the other 3 have a lot, then you're in good position. And if you just look last year at the teams, the defenses that forced a lot of turnovers. So Dallas led the league. Indianapolis should have made the playoffs. New England did make the playoffs. Oh, they didn't? Did they?
They did, yeah.
They did make the playoffs.
One and done against the Bills.
Arizona did make the playoffs. Tampa Bay did make the playoffs. Kansas City did. Buffalo did. Green Bay did. New Orleans. Like, these are the teams that forced the turnovers last year. It's important.
The other aspect of playing, the Chargers team-building effort, we've been saying this for a few years now, you're building to stop the Chiefs. For whatever you're doing, you're trying to stop the Chiefs. You got to beat the team that's been the best team in the division. And you probably do that by loading up on the secondary. And look, the Chargers we haven't mentioned the player, who used to be number 33 and he's now number 3 back there. What a good-looking group that is. The player, number 3 on the Chargers, along with Asante and J.C. Jackson. Bryce Callahan, another intriguing guy that's been far better, more good than bad throughout his career. Wasn't as good last season, but has been one of the better slot corners in recent years. I say this a lot in these shows. The pieces are in place. I mean, they are really with the Chargers. But for the 10th straight year, the pieces are in place.
That's the only thing.
Can they get over the hump and actually do it here?
It does feel like this is a good team in good position and doing things in a smart way. I criticize the Jags a lot for there being no discernible pattern to anything they're doing. The Chargers, you can see several patterns in what they're doing across the board. You can see every step of the way how it fits into the broader picture, and that gives confidence. I think it's a confidence-inspiring thing to see the strategy that somebody is trying to execute. Whether or not that strategy works, you can at least understand that everybody has agreed on a plan, is working in the same direction. The only caveat is, this is not a new thing. Every single offseason, everybody gets hyped about the Chargers and doesn't work out.
I want to see more aggressiveness from Herbert again, too. I just want to see him. There are certain games. I think that's one of the impressive things about Herbert is he can play the short game. It's kind of like Josh Allen improving his short game and underneath stuff and accuracy and all that stuff. It's cool that he could do it. But Justin Herbert tied for 25th with Jacoby Brissett in average depth of target last year. Just like Mahomes was tied with Tua in average depth of target last year, 7.4.
Herbert, I think, there's some connections there or some parallels between Herbert and right now I think Herbert is personally responsible for a missing percentage of efficiency or level of play or how good he can be, right? He is personally costing himself a certain percentage and not quite maximizing his potential in the same way that I think Russell Wilson is probably personally responsible for a gap between what Russell Wilson is capable of and where Russell Wilson tends to play. So I think there's an onus on both those quarterbacks who, look, let's be clear, are both great.
Yeah.
Those are both very good quarterbacks and are the reason their teams are in playoff contention. But the thing that is separating Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson from A, the players that they can be, and B, the best quarterback in the NFL is themselves at this point. And I'm interested to see if either guy can get out of their own way for that little percentage.
You wouldn't expect, for the way we talk about Justin Herbert being tied for 20th in big-time throw rate as well last year. Well, you wouldn't expect that because we remember, his big-time throws are 55 yards on a dime on a post, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he also has non-big-time throws that are just fun to watch, right? Here's this deep comeback with just, on a rope. But I would try to tap into that more. I'm not saying turn the ball over more if you're Justin Herbert, because his turnover-worthy play rate was incredible. But I sound like the spreadsheet guy who's just throw the ball downfield more. But there is this element of if you're just the same thing I've said about Matthew Stafford through the years, and I said about Derek Carr earlier on the show, and I've said about Justin Herbert. When I have a guy that can make special throws, I want to tap into that more. And if there are some mistakes made along the way, fine. I want to see more aggressiveness. And I think that could be a big part of – because if Herbert turns the ball over a few more times, that'll offset by the fourth down, aggressiveness and the defense maybe turning the ball over the other way.
Did you see, speaking of spreadsheets, did you see that the World Excel Championships were on ESPN2 the other day?
What?
With your conditional formatting skills, you could maybe give it a run.
Oh, man. For finally my VLOOKUPs and
I mean, you've made some pretty
VLOOKUPs,
behemoth spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I don't know if size
have they seen the draft model? Have they seen my draft model? That could be.
I don't know if size is a good thing in the World Excel Championships. But
you probably want to take a lot of data and have it be quick and efficient. What were the goals here?
I don't know.
This is when they turned ESPN2 into the Ocho?
My knowledge of what I'm talking about ends when I stop talking back at the start there. I don't have any further information.
I'll have to investigate the Excel championships here. Our nerd friends would be so mad. Nobody likes to do stuff in Excel. It's got to be R or Python.
Yeah.
But my draft model's getting Pythonized right now, so we're getting that, making that more efficient here. All right, where are you going with the Chargers? Over, under, it's 10.
10, you said?
Yeah, I'm buying in. They're competing for the division. It's Chiefs and Chargers at the top of the division here this year.
They're going to win 10 as well. I don't like that.
They're going to win 11 at least.
People.
Them and the Chiefs both going over here.
Thought over-unders had to be half games. And now we're getting all these flat numbers.
There's some halves.
They're going to win 10
Jaguars
games as well. I'm pushing this one as well.
Push. Somebody should keep track. I've probably gone over on 3/4 of the league here.
Yeah.
Steve, Mr. Optimism here. Well, that's your AFC West. Best division in football?
Yeah.
Has to be. The NFC West is up there too. The Seahawks are probably lagging behind, but the top 3 teams, maybe it's not anymore.
No.
Start with the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of offseason drama here with the with the Arizona Cardinals. Actually, before we get into the Cardinals, I got to tell you about our friends over at DraftKings.
Okay.
They got some stuff happening here.
Well, what do we got?
Well, we're going to join the next generation of fantasy football with Rainmakers Football. This is their first ever NFT fantasy game from DraftKings. It's the only NFT fantasy game licensed by the NFLPA. So now you can play all season long with millions in prizes by building the ultimate NFT franchise. Right now, everyone can get their first full roster starter pack for free. That's right, free. Playing Rainmakers is simple. You buy, sell, bid, and win player card NFTs of the biggest names in the game through regular drops and auctions on DraftKings Marketplace. Craft lineups of athletes from your NFT collection and earn points for touchdowns, receptions, and more, just like daily fantasy football. So you can build your NFT franchise and enter free Rainmakers football contests all season long to compete for millions in prizes. The next generation of fantasy sports is here. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now. Sign up with promo code PFF. Click the Rainmakers tile and opt in to get your first card for free. Plus, play for millions of prizes all football season while building the ultimate NFT fantasy franchise with Rainmakers Football. It's promo code PFF. Build, play, win. Only at DraftKings. Contest entries dependent on type and number of NFTs held. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. You'll get George to get on those terms and conditions for us, maybe.
He's good at it.
Yeah, we usually just drop him in. That's a specialty here at PFF. All right, Arizona Cardinals. I got some thoughts, but
what are your thoughts?
Are they one? So there was all the Kyler Murray drama.
Yep.
Right. That was a thing. I mentioned this with the Cowboys. Most teams in the NFL, like you said earlier, like my team had X number of wins, and we added all these players. We're going to get better. Are the Cardinals one of the few teams around the league where it just doesn't feel like they got better this offseason?
Well, feel is the important term there, because that's kind of the offseason works that way, where everybody looks at what happened last year and then adds to it based off what they did in the offseason. The Cardinals are the one team where you look at what they did last year and for some reason assume it's heading in the wrong direction because of the way every season ends for them, which is bad. So the Cardinals won 11 games last season.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good team.
That's better than the Raiders, who were talking about, being a successful team. It's better than two better games better than the Chargers. Okay, the division, you can say that's easier. That's the reason, but the division wasn't bad last year. Anyway,
but Call of Duty comes out every November.
It does, and therefore the play of the Arizona Cardinals declines down the stretch. Look, I've been harping on this for a while, but I think there's a disconnect between the big picture trend curve for the Cardinals. You plot in your World Excel Championships, you add the trend curve, and you see up.
Upward trajectory.
The perfect line.
Yeah.
But if you make it more, if you increase the gradation, you start tracking it week by week, you see these dips at the end of every one of these accelerated curves. I'm just saying that big picture, this team has gone from the worst team in the NFL. They stank when everybody came in. And now they're a good team, and there's a lot of good places, and they just locked down the quarterback that plays Call of Duty and doesn't do 4 hours of homework. And look, there's a lot of reasons to like this Arizona Cardinals team. But everybody kind of ignores them because the seasons end so badly. And look, I don't want to. You can't take that away or dismiss it. I think that's an important thing that they need to figure out. Particularly Cliff Kingsbury needs to, I think, understand and address why this starts going south at the end of every season. If he needs to get on the phone with people, the Call of Duty and push the release date back, whatever it is. But they need to figure out why this thing starts to decline down the stretch. And honestly, I think it is more of a Kingsbury issue than a Kyler Murray issue.
Can you guys please release the game in mid-February or something?
Look, I remember all the stuff we talked about, that he doesn't move his receivers around, and it makes him easier to defend. But it also makes him, again, teams I can't remember who talked about this or broke it down, but like the NFL season almost gets broken down into a couple of different parts. You start off and it's like, oh, wow, figuring out who everybody is, right? The first week, the overreaction season, the overreaction to the overreaction. And then after like 4 or 5 weeks, you've got a reasonable handle on who everybody is this year. And a lot of times the teams they're different to who you thought they'd be. You know, the Bengals last year. Oh, wow, the Bengals are different than we thought they were going to be this season. You knew that after a few weeks. Then you get, okay, now defenses start to counter the new reality of the league. Everybody starts to adjust. And then you get the final part of the season, which is now can you counter the counter? Can you figure out how to still be successful versus what teams have brought to the table to stop what you were doing? That feels like where the Cardinals fall down every year, which is you get through the first period. Wow, the Cardinals are great. They're winning. Kyler Murray's leading the league in big-time throw rate. This thing's insane. And then teams adjust, and you get through that period. And then the final bit, it's like, well, now you didn't adjust.
And he got hurt. But they go 2-1 without him?
Yeah, but it's a multi-year trend, right?
Sure.
And I think the question was brought up about Sean McVay as well, and the same idea.
I was going to say, you were saying the same thing about McVay. Even though they made the Super Bowl, there were definite drop-offs in performance second half.
And the questions for him were definitely surrounded, like what happens when teams bring something different to the table? Can you adjust to that? Can you go to plan B and C and D? And obviously last year answered a lot of those. But for Kingsbury, I think that's the thing, is that once teams adjust to his offense, you're not giving them enough problems, or you're not giving them enough new problems to counter that. So you just get less efficient as the season goes on because you're not moving your receivers around. You're not doing anything new. So once they've seen it for 6 games, they're like, all right, fine, let's go. Like now we know how to stop that.
Part of, I think, the pessimism with the Cardinals. So I think what you're breaking down is fascinating, right? Like, I think you're right. There's something the Cardinals need to do in the second half of the season. But to the same point, hey, McVay and the Rams kind of figured it out. They did it, right? So it's not this impossible task. Part of the pessimism, I think, with the Cardinals is moves like trading a first-rounder for Marquise Brown, which on the surface, when you're looking at long-term team building, probably a questionable move, probably a risky one, right? Because Marquise Brown most likely wants a contract in the $18 to $20 million range, and I don't know if he's worth that, right? So you're either going to pay him more money than he's worth soon to justify the first-round pick you gave up, or you're only going to get 2 years of service out of Marquise Brown for the first-round pick. But I would say in the short term, this could do some nice things for the Cardinals offense. Remember, DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for 6 games? It's 6. When he comes back, we're looking at DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, who's not the same AJ Green, but he was solid last year, but a little better than I expected last year. Marquise Brown as your deep threat, who you don't need to make a number 1 like the Ravens were hoping he would become. And then Rondell Moore as your screen guy. I like that. And I like all the tight ends that they've added. So, I mean, there is reason for optimism. I think part of the pessimism, though, is defensively you've got some holes. Offensively, you have a move like a Marquise Brown where like we kind of chalked it up into don't love this move, but I think there could be some short-term benefit to it.
That's what I mean. Like outside of the concerns that everybody has about this team. Oh, look, that secondary doesn't look great on paper, and there's a bunch of weaknesses, relatively speaking. There's a bunch of potential problems, all of which was true last year when they won 11 games.
Right.
Despite collapsing down the stretch, right? Like this is
They did. They won 11 games despite a cornerback room that was pretty bad on paper relative to the rest of the league, and linebackers who have underachieved, and guys getting injured and the whole thing.
They drafted Zayvon Collins last year and barely played him.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is a team that succeeded last year in spite of a lot of things going against them and a lot of problems that people are now using as reasons to beat this team down. Again, I just think overall the perception doesn't match the reality of where we should expect the Cardinals to be.
Where should they be?
A good team.
Another good team.
A playoff team that probably wins double-digit games again, and then we need to figure out if they can stop collapsing down the end.
Now, I'm not saying I disagree with you on this.
What's their over-under?
I haven't looked at it yet. I'm not saying I disagree with you on this necessarily, but I do think it's beneficial. Their over-under is 8.5.
Right. See what I mean? They won 11 games last year.
Same as the Raiders.
They didn't get demonstrably worse. Whatever about did they get much better? They add Marquise Brown. They should get presumably contributions from guys like Zayvon Collins in year 2. Like there's a lot of ways that this team might get better. in addition to the things that are concerns, but we're taking 3 games off them because the feels are, well, this is terrible.
Yeah,
look at how it ended.
The feels have been bad in recent years with, say, the Steelers. I think it was heading into last year where they had, it's like you wasted a first round. You had offensive line issues and you used a first-round pick on Najee Harris and you have an aging Ben Roethlisberger. How are you going to get better? And somehow the Steelers won games.
But you go back a year ago and the feels were bad again. We were talking about is Cliff Kingsbury on the hot seat, and they go from 8 to 11. Like, it's the same crap.
So that's where I was going to push back a little bit because Greg Rosenthal told me to push back on you and say there is something to be said, at least from Kyler Murray's perspective, in high-level trajectory. He has gotten better every single season, even with the data talking about the second half decline in Call of Duty fun stuff that people have been putting online. You can look at Kyler Murray's passing grade going from 61 to 77 to 86 last year. Last year he fumbled a bunch, so his run grade wasn't great, but I think he's always sitting on that trump card where any given season he could rush for 600 or 700 yards if they choose to do it offensively from a design standpoint or just from a scrambling standpoint. He still has to cut down on sack totals and how many pressures he invites and all that stuff, but even that has gotten better, much better since his rookie season at least. Big time throw rate, as you mentioned, was close to 8%. So the special plays are there for Kyler, but more importantly, I think the underneath stuff and the intermediate stuff was better last year. You've got this slew of playmakers. I mentioned all the receivers earlier, but Zach Ertz comes back. Max Williams is still there if he's ever going to be healthy. They draft Trey McBride, who's probably the best receiving tight end in the NFL. One of those guys will emerge.
Draft.
What did I say?
In the NFL.
Yeah. Probably the best receiving. Yeah, I was going too fast. It's going too fast. It was Austin Gale style right
way
there.
Too far.
Way too fast. Best receiving.
That's how you get an all takes exposed.
Oh, yeah. We'll get him
Monday.
To call me out. Trey McBride was the best receiving tight end in the draft, 2022 draft. So they got all these options. Receivers. James Conner was really efficient coming out of the backfield last year, both receiving and running. Had all those touchdowns, right? Because that's the other thing Kingsbury's offense has done is essentially elevated the offensive line, which doesn't look great on paper as Rodney Hudson gets a little bit older and Josh Jones has never really played well. Maybe Will Hernandez can step in, who also hasn't played well. But they should at least be average on the offensive line. So the offense, I think, will be good. And Kyler, if he continues to take the high-level trajectory of getting better every year, which he has, Cardinals are good. And I'm leaning over the 8.5 despite all the stuff.
Is that your pushback?
No, my pushback was you should look at Kyler. You can look at Kyler from a high-level standpoint. You're looking at the Cardinals and saying they've collapsed the last couple of years, and that's the story. I am looking at it from a high-level view and saying, as a team, they have gotten better every single year. Kyler's gotten better every single year, and you can use that going forward.
Well, that's
it's not
what
just
I'm
this
saying.
collapse narrative.
Your pushback is backing up my point.
Pushback on one part of your point.
Okay. Also, by the way, a lot of the moves that people and even us don't like, they're more going to cause problems down the line in terms of like team building and resource management, all that kind of stuff. So the Marquise Brown trade. Is that a good idea to I don't want to say burn. Is it a good idea to sacrifice that kind of draft capital to bring in a guy who may have a level and you're going to have to pay huge money to if you want to keep him around? Probably not. Is it a good idea to re-sign James Conner to decent money after the season that he just had? In fact, that season suggests that's the reason you don't give him that kind of money, because you can just plug in the next guy. Anyway, they did that. Probably not. But does it make them worse this year? No. It might make them worse 2 years from now.
Right.
But it actually, if anything, helps this year. Like Marquise Brown, whatever you think about him, is probably better than any receiver they would have drafted with that pick. Fair?
No, that's fair.
So
that's
the moves that we don't like, the things that you would criticize them for, may have made them better this year.
That was like, again, the year that the fields were bad for the Packers was the year that they drafted Jordan Love in the first round. And it's like, yeah, I mean, they probably left an opportunity on the table to be better that year, but it was more just this long-term T-building effort where you're leaving something on the table for Aaron Rodgers, but you could still be a really good team, which they were. That's where the Cardinals are right now.
So anyway, my overwhelming feeling is that people are taking this thing way too far. And
8.5 feels low.
They're better than an 8.5 win team.
This stupid thing's loud now. Got the wrong straw in it. It's a whole ordeal. My question for the Cardinals is still on the defensive side of the ball. They managed without great corners last year, but like their starting corners right now could be Josh Jackson, rejuvenated Josh Jackson coming from Green Bay, Breon Borders, Marco Wilson, who was up and down as a rookie last year. Byron Murphy's a good slot who could make some plays. But they were really relying on their safeties making plays, Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson. So there's questions on the back end there. They're trying to turn Isaiah Simmons into like the star position, kind of a hybrid, kind of like what he did in college, walkout linebacker, hybrid safety linebacker type of player. So, they need some of those things to hit. Then you have J.J. Watt and Marcus Golden up front. Probably need one of those mid-round rookies, Cameron Thomas or Myjai Sanders, to step up as a pass rusher. So
he's been getting camp buzz.
Which one, Sanders?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's explosive. He's a good player. So, what do you think? You gonna go over on the 8.5 for the Cardinals?
Over.
I'm leaning that way too. Over for the Cardinals. I want to see what happens with that defense. And if Kyler continues his overall trajectory, they're a very good team if he continues to get better. He improved in some of the key areas last year. But you do have to answer that second half collapse narrative. All right, going over the 8.5 for the Cardinals. You're defending world champion Los Angeles Rams next up here. Are the Rams going to be better this year? Can they replicate last season? Probably the biggest story of the season last year was bringing in Matthew Stafford. The power move that the Rams made, and it worked. It worked. There was a point even before they won the Super Bowl where I declared that it worked because it made the team better. I mean, it bridged the gap from what they were with Jared Goff and at least gave them an opportunity. Now, specifically winning the Super Bowl makes it a lot easier to justify the move as well. But just like other teams, we talk a lot about just increasing your odds and getting on the green and getting closer to the pin or whatever analogy you want to use here. The Rams have given themselves a chance to win Super Bowls rather than just make the playoffs every year.
Spoken like a man whose golf shot buried itself into somebody's front yard the last time I saw you.
We didn't put on TikTok my good shots and putts.
True. Were there such things?
There were.
Okay.
I almost drove the green on a par 4 because every now and again my nearly
the biomechanics hooks up and
it just once a round it's a beautiful thing.
That's why golf is the most hateful game in the world because everybody has one of those around.
Yeah.
And that's
it's like I could be a pro if I could just do this one thing 70 times instead of once.
Yeah.
That's it. That's how close you are to being good.
Yeah. Hateful game.
So I almost drove the green on a par 4.
Yeah.
I had some long putts that I hit that went in.
The Rams are pretty compelling because they won it all. They won the Super Bowl. The FDM picks, the whole strategy worked because they got the payoff. You're right. You did say that it worked anyway. My point was like if this doesn't result in a Super Bowl, I don't know that it worked. I mean, okay, they got to the playoffs. They went on a little run in the playoffs. But if they don't get a ring out of this, are they really much different than they were before, where they were contenders anyway and they were probably going to the playoffs and then not winning it? Because remember, like they were 10-6 last year with Stafford. Like the upgrade got them to 10-6. Really, it was the run in the postseason that transformed things. They had to go and knock off the Buccaneers. They had to go and beat everybody on their way to finally get that championship. And that's what makes them a team to watch this season, is that there's a lot of room to be better. We saw it in the postseason. If you got good Stafford for an entire run, not just Stafford putting up like mind-blowing numbers, because Stafford plus McVay plus Cooper Kupp equals fireworks, but if you get Stafford without all the turnover-worthy plays and you get him actually keeping it together for a broader period of time, there's a hell of a higher ceiling in it than we saw last season for the 10-6 overall record. But is that just part and parcel of Matthew Stafford and just the Rams generally? Like, the strategy works in that it gets you on the green, as you said, and then it lets you go on a run, and all you need is 4 games of high-end play instead of 12, 15. Like, is that part of this deal, or are they capable of much more? We just didn't see it yet.
Remember the flow of last season, too? Like, they were so good for the majority of the year, and then they fell off again. And this was your McVay narrative, seemed like it came back again, right? I mean, there were some games like the Stafford's turnovers and like actual turnover-worthy plays, much like the 2020 Super Bowl champion Bucs. The Rams had that absolute dud on prime time. Everybody's watching, and they just collapsed. Scored, 3 points in that game on Monday Night Football? And it's like, all right, well, this team's done. And then they bounced back, and they were fine. And Stafford, what Stafford brought to the table in the playoffs was yeah, against the Bucs with the game on the line, I can go deep and make this incredible throw. With the game on the line in the Super Bowl, you can't stop Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. Like, go ahead, stop us, because we're going to make special plays. I mean, that was the difference between Stafford and Goff. Just because they won the Super Bowl doesn't mean it was all great along the way. But they mitigated disaster in a few games down the stretch there. So I want to see if this offense can be a little bit more consistent. Stafford's dealing with this tendonitis issue. I have no idea if that's going to carry into the season. I will say elbow injuries generally will affect accuracy. Whereas if you have a shoulder injury, you're going to lose a little bit of velocity. So if Stafford, who's already not the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, misses a few throws, will sail some and all that stuff. If the elbow does carry into the season, could be some accuracy issues that we see here. And there's no time in the season to really rest your elbow unless you just stop practicing, and then just not practicing hurt how much you're effective.
Yeah, like Stafford started the year amazingly. He had 6 turnover-worthy plays in the first 8 games, and then 9 in the next 3. So he had this incredible start to the year, and then there was this 3-week period where he was just pitching the ball to the defense constantly, and everyone was like, uh-oh, there's the real Stafford back again. And then he kind of settled back to something in the middle, somewhere relatively normal, and then ended the year again with a lot more turnover-worthy plays. So it was more of the Stafford roller coaster from that point on. The other thing I would say, by the way, if you're playing the Rams this year, you might want to bring in Mike Zimmer as like a consultant. You know how many turnover-worthy plays Stafford has in his last 3 games against the Vikings?
I saw he had 4 last year.
Yeah, he had 3 in each of the 2 games the year before that.
Yeah,
so that's 10 in 3 games against Zimmer.
And that was Zimmer, and that was the Vikings D that sacked him like 8 or 9 times that one game where that was a fun one. So the Lions Stafford gets sacked 8 or 9 times in the game, and the offensive line grades weren't even that bad. And it was one of those next days where people are like, why are the Stafford got sacked 1,000,000 times. Why is the offensive line grade not bad? Because we went back to look at all the sacks, and it was all scheme based.
Yeah.
It was all like unblocked rushers that were just out schemed, right? And it wasn't the one-on-ones that the offensive line wanted. You're right. I mean, Zimmer he's a very good defensive coach who always seemed to do well against Stafford in general.
But anyway, like Stafford's season after the incredible start, I think ended up much more like a roller coaster, which is, kind of what you would expect from Matthew Stafford. Before then, we got to the postseason, and that's when things changed, and he went on that run.
It was very good.
He still had like 1 a game where he was pitching the ball right to the defense, but it was 1 a game, not 3 or 4. So the Rams are just the whole strategy worked. I don't think it was an all-in for last year, the way a lot of people have phrased it. Like, the Rams got to win this year or else. They had to win last year to show it worked. But I don't think it was like, well, that was our window. We get 1, and now we're done. They're still contenders again. Everything that was a reason they were successful last year is pretty much still there. There's no reason this can't last for a few seasons as long as they keep finding enough low-value, low-cost acquisitions to patch up the rest of things. The Rams are going to be good.
And part of, you've called it stars and scrubs as a strategy.
That was Eric's. I coined it.
You stole it from Eric, stars and scrubs, right? The investment in Von Miller for a 2nd and 3rd round pick. You'll probably get the third round comp pick coming back, I believe, right? But you invest a 2nd and a 3rd for 10 games of Von Miller. Sure, it paid off in the meantime. But they've still managed to say, okay, Von Miller walks, but we're bringing in Bobby Wagner.
Yeah.
And then they've specifically targeted positions in the draft, right? So they didn't pick till pick 101 or whatever it was. And that viral video of McVay and them laughing about Cole Strange. It was because they were just like, we're going to draft a guard right around pick 100, 101, whatever it was, and that because we need a right guard, right? So again, you said they do things very differently and specifically, and we always say draft the best player, and they're like, no, we have like a few draft picks where we have to, like, we need a corner. We need a right guard. So they go into, Logan Bruss is in the mix for starting right guard. It's a huge question mark right now, but they feel good enough about everything else around him at the team that they can handle a mid-round guard is just going to start for us this year, and we're going to deal with that as a team. So that's what's always fascinating about the Rams' strategy. You would never suggest to most teams, just go find your starting right guard. You have to get him in the draft. It's the only place to get him. But the Rams are good enough elsewhere, essentially that they can deal with that. Joseph Noteboom's going to step in at left tackle for Andrew Whitworth. But there are more questions on the O-line now certainly than there were a year ago.
That's a big move, the Whitworth to Noteboom thing. Noteboom came in for Whitworth, finally got the sort of chance to play left tackle as opposed to wherever they need him on the line on the right side more often. Looked really good for the time he was starting for Whitworth, but we're still talking about a really small sample size of play for Noteboom. And that small sample size can be indicative of future performance. We might be looking at a guy who steps in and is seamlessly, a better than average left tackle, which would be great. Small sample sizes can also lie, and maybe you just saw a couple of good games from him, and actually over the course of the year that's going to shake out to much more like below average or whatever, and then all of a sudden left tackle is not a problem spot, but it's not a strength anymore.
Yeah, I would say Austin Corbett leaving, Joseph Noteboom taking over at left tackle. 2 more question marks this year on the O-line than they had a year ago at this time. Defensively, you're going to lose Darius Williams on the outside, who was fantastic, opposite Jalen Ramsey. Trying to replace him with a combination of David Long, maybe.
Get the great Troy Hill back.
Get the great Troy Hill's coming back to play the slot, outside, whatever they want to have him do. Ramsey was playing a lot more in the slot at times. You have a couple athletic corners in Jacoby Durant in the draft, last year's draft, Robert Rochelle. Again, this is just from like a player evaluation standpoint. They have a type at corner. They're getting these long athletic corners over the last couple of years. Are they going to – one of them – they need one of those guys to step up. They have done a good job of when a John Johnson – at safety walks, they have guys to replace him. They have Jordan Fuller and Taylor Rapp, guys from the draft to replace these guys at positions that the NFL values a little bit less. That's all part of the Rams team building strategy. Finding an Ernest Jones in the draft to just play a ton of linebacker as a third rounder, right? So they're giving young guys a lot of time. All the while, last year, the stat that we said using PFF WAR, the most non-quarterback WAR added to their team. Mostly because Aaron Donald is dominant, Cooper Kupp was dominant, and Jalen Ramsey was the most valuable corner in the NFL. So they've got this top-heavy production where then you can offset, hey, we've got a third rounder in the starting lineup. We have a fifth rounder in the starting lineup. So I'm always fascinated to see how this plays out for the Rams. But you still have Donald up there. It looks a lot cooler when you have Von Miller and Leonard Floyd coming off the edge. You don't have that anymore. It's just Leonard Floyd, and you need a Justin Hollins to step up opposite him. But the Rams come in with question marks just like they did last year. But they got carried by their stars.
Yeah.
They're going to do it again.
Yeah, to the extent where, again, I think the Rams are going to be a good team. They're going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be one of the contenders this year because they have enough talent in the right areas to do it again. Will it work again? Probably not. Not, you know what I mean? Like, will it work again in terms of will they back up and repeat as a Super Bowl champion? No. Will it work again in terms of they win double-digit games, make the playoffs, and are a threat to anybody again? Yeah, sure.
Their over-under's 10.5. It's also one of those matchup type of things, right? Like when the Rams have lost to the Packers each of the last 2 years, including in the playoffs 2 years ago, the Rams have beaten Tom Brady and the Bucs the last 3 times they've played. So a lot of it's just matchup driven. The Rams play really well against the Bucs. They don't perform well against the Packers. The Bucs have beaten the Packers the 2 times that they've played them over the last couple of years, right? A lot of this could just be who you run into in the playoffs and what the matchups look like. All that said, hey, the Rams couldn't beat the 49ers for the longest time either, and then they did in the NFC Championship game. They did, get over that hump. So
what was that run? It was some insane number.
It was like 6 games.
Yeah.
Where the 49ers and Shanahan, and that was even when Shanahan was dealing with his lesser teams.
Yeah.
That they were just dominating.
And lesser quarterbacks.
Rams. That's why, how much do you buy into trends? McVay's teams always drop off, or the Rams, just can't beat the 49ers. Both, another similarity to the Bucs, right? The Bucs couldn't beat the Saints, and then they only beat them in the playoffs. The Rams couldn't beat the Niners, and they beat them in the playoffs. So I don't know how much you even buy into those types of trends, but Rams are going to be really good again. Over or under that 10.5?
Over. Let's give them 11 wins.
Yeah, I'll say over again for the Rams. They'll be really good again. I think Stafford's elbow might be a big deal, though. I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Big elbow guy?
Yeah, I had tendonitis. I was going to the big leagues in 2008. Tendonitis, though. 6 weeks.
Is this something I'm going to have to deal with the 60-mile-an-hour pitches?
Tendonitis?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you probably – no. It's an overuse injury.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I I keep hoping that one day, down the line, that the entire family will max out our deductible and I'll be able to just go and get a scan on everything that's wrong. I don't think we're ever getting there, but
you should get an MRI before and after.
I was doing curls one day, right? And something clicked in my elbow. And it kind of, an audible, and B, a quite uncomfortable way. And I've determined through, several months of doing weights afterwards that it was nothing, major, and that I can still work and, lift things heavy and nothing collapses or falls off or whatever. But it has hurt almost constantly from that point on, particularly if you really tighten it up like this. So I don't know if we got any doctors in the house or anyone that knows what the hell that is, but somewhere along the line, I probably need to get that looked at. But that might be, what I'm saying is that could be
maybe it'll pop back into place here.
Well, maybe I'll pop back into place, or maybe it'll, whatever it is, finally it will go, and I'll have to get it checked.
See, just the way you simulate the throw gives me no confidence you're going to hit 60.
I'm sitting in a chair just miming a throwing thing.
Yeah, because you're miming a curveball.
Miming a curveball?
You're going to cut the ball. You're going to get it on the side.
Hang on, what's the curving part? What am I doing?
You just want to keep your hand behind the ball because you get backspin.
I can do that. I'm just whip. Because the football is what I'm used to throwing. So this.
Okay, just saying, just not instilling confidence.
I'm not concerned. We're hitting 60 without a problem.
Who's next here? NFC West. Where's my list?
San Francisco
49ers. Are they ahead of the Seahawks? Yeah. San Francisco 49ers. A lot of hype coming out of camp here for the defense with the Niners. They're a team that started out slow last year. Jimmy Garoppolo started out slow, then he starts to play much better football. He had this weird run of just horrible, horrible decisions, ugly passes. But overall, the Garoppolo era with the 49ers, when he's been on the field, they've won way more than they lost, way better than the backups performed. That's the storyline I'm looking at here, Sam. QB wins or not, whatever you want to say. Kyle Shanahan with Jimmy Garoppolo versus without Jimmy Garoppolo has been like night and day. Healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, his 2 full seasons when he's been healthy, Super Bowl loss, NFC championship loss. Everything else in between, the Niners just didn't make the playoffs. Now, you got Trey Lance taking over at quarterback. We've talked a lot about what he can bring as a runner. He's got a cannon for an arm. Even in his limited time, we saw him make throws that Garoppolo just didn't make. At the same time, Trey Lance also likes to throw the ball to the defense and make some poor decisions in there. And then you get this incredible group of playmakers and George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and all his training camp hype. Super Bowl or bust here for the Niners, even in Trey Lance's first year as a starter?
No, I mean, not Super Bowl or bust, but I think they expect to be better than they were a year ago and in contention, right? That's why you make that move. To me, that is the story for the 49ers this year, is what does this Trey Lance, Kyle Shanahan offense look like? Because I am still incredibly excited by the potential of what it is. Everything that's happened in the last decade of offensive evolution from the Shanahan plus RG3 period has only made the potential of that offense better and more destructive. So if Trey Lance is anything other than a complete and total unmitigated disaster as a passer, this offense should be exciting and fun as hell to watch.
Forgot to mention Allen Robinson joining the Rams, by the way.
Yeah.
But him and Kupp, they're going to be awesome. With the Niners, I am looking forward to seeing how much they do tap into Trey Lance as a runner. The Shanahan system and scheme, all it tries to do is make the defense wrong. Yeah. And the thing that they did back in the 90s was essentially try to cancel one of the defenders by running their outside zone scheme, right? It's like the defensive end. He's just out of the play because we're going to run boot action off this, and he has to respect that. That's all the run game is angles and numbers. And if the Niners have created a good run game without a running quarterback, how much do they tap into that? I mean, I mentioned that Kyler in any given year can rush for 600 or 700 yards if you want. I think Trey Lance could be a 1,000-yard runner if you want him to be. I think he could be up in that Lamar Jackson. We could put up 1,000 rushing yards with this quarterback if you want to run him 10 to 15 times a game as part of the game plan. I don't know if they want to go to that extreme, but the ways you can keep defenses off balance by using Trey Lance as a runner and then by having all of the plays that you run off of that, it's incredible. And we've always talked up Kyle Shanahan, the play caller, using EPA per play, consistently a top 5, 7 passing offense with a quarterback that ranks 13th, 15th, 18th, whatever it is in PFF grade. So when you separate the quarterback's performance from the offense's performance, Kyle Shanahan's always elevated those guys. Open throws, good playmakers, whatever it might be. So Niners offense could be scary good. Plus they got the best player in the NFL last year in Trent Williams.
Last year.
Left tackle.
You're right. The whole idea of that offense is just to make defenses wrong every step of the way. I'm just so excited by what this meshed system of run and pass together looks like with a guy like Trey Lance, a quarterback. And then, by the way, even if he's scattershot, even if he's inaccurate, even if he makes bad decisions, the dude has a cannon for an arm. Like, he can make some special throws that simply aren't on the table for Jimmy G. And those throws are more important in an offense where you are going to be pushing the boundaries in terms of what you do with the run game and all that kind of stuff. Like, remember all those plays where they run something, some kind of play action, and like all of a sudden George Kittle, there's nobody within 20 yards of him in the middle of the field. That's great. But now imagine, like, there's a sort of throwing range, like an arc that Jimmy Garoppolo can even hit with his arm based off the time that's involved in that play and the length, the duration between snap to setting up. That arc is significantly wider with Trey Lance, a quarterback, which means you can hit more of the field, which means you can scheme open more of the field and dial up stuff that wasn't on the options card beforehand. Again, I'm so excited by what this offense can be with all the playmakers they have, with an offensive line that should be fine, and with Kyle Shanahan having spent a decade cooking this up.
Yeah, a couple of the numbers that try to like paint the picture of what Jimmy Garoppolo brought to the table as a quarterback and how good they were as a passing offense. Jimmy Garoppolo, including the postseason last year, number 2 in yards per attempt behind Joe Burrow, 8.4 yards per attempt. Before we did more analytics on football, yards per attempt was like the first thing. It's like, oh, that's probably the best number. Just have more yards per every time you drop back. Probably the best number. Jimmy Garoppolo second, despite being 6th lowest in average depth of target, which means there's a lot of short passes. There's a lot of yards after the catch. There's probably open throws, all of that stuff. Jimmy Garoppolo, big-time throw rate, always been pretty low. 34th in the NFL, tied with Jared Goff. This is kind of the same thing the Rams were trying to do, right? Goff was really low big-time throw rate. They were still creating good offense. You added Stafford to the picture. He was able to just create more chunk plays. So Garoppolo had all those yards per attempt despite not having any big-time throws, hardly any. Trey Lance can do that. He can bring that to the table. He will add that to the mix. And Garoppolo is also really low, really high in turnover-worthy play rate, obnoxiously high by the end of the playoffs because he had a rough playoff run as far as turning it over. Second highest turnover-worthy play rate behind Mike Glennon. Really, Garoppolo is worst among all the starters. Trey Lance probably won't be worse than that this year, over 5
honestly,
turnover-worthy play rate.
The bar for Trey Lance to be a better passer than Jimmy Garoppolo based off last season, it's not even that high.
And let me just say, Garoppolo still finished with a 70 grade as a passer, meaning he had a lot of positives. He moved the chains. He found guys open beyond the sticks, but that was it. But a lot of that was probably scheme-based. I don't know how you separate, though. Say what you want about QB wins. I mean, there's got to be something to Garoppolo. When they had him, the A/B analysis of the Niners with and without, just like you can't say that with the Saints, when they lost him, they still won games. The Niners just always seem to be a really good team and win with Garoppolo. Will Trey Lance be able to keep that going?
What do you think the defense is going to look like?
I know you want to go to the defense.
Yeah.
Great. I think they're going to be pretty good. They were a weird defense, like with anything 10-plus yards, deep down the field passes. They were one of the worst in the league. They were just another one of those teams that game plan oriented, could put together some good games. They had a nice little playoff run, especially against the Packers and the Niners. I think the secondary is much better. It probably as good as they were back in 2019, maybe not as good as 2019. Best since their Super Bowl run. Adding Travarius Ward, Emmanuel Mosley's been a pretty decent player. Darqueze Dennard probably play in the slot. Jason Verrett, we'll see if he can come back again from all those injuries. But it is probably the best secondary. One of the best linebackers in the NFL, and Fred Warner. And then who rushes the passer opposite Nick Bosa? Your guy, Drake Jackson, maybe second rounder coming out of the draft. So I think they'll be good.
Yeah, same.
But not top 5. I mean, there's a lot of hype coming out of camp here.
Probably not. I have too many concerns about the front 7 generally. Like, I think that they need a little bit more juice there consistently, and maybe Drake Jackson is that guy, but interior is pretty weak. Javon Kinlaw hasn't become the player he was supposed to be, which is one of the case study examples for that risk of trading away a player and then replacing him with the pick that you got. You know, it works out sometimes. The Vikings went from Stephon Diggs to Justin Jefferson. Great. It's happened. But then the flip side of that is, okay, but the 49ers went from DeForest Buckner to Javon Kinlaw. That didn't work as well. Now, okay, they saved the money. They didn't have to pay DeForest Buckner the big contract, but that's the risk, is you roll the dice on a guy like Kinlaw and he hasn't become the player that he was supposed to be.
I liked the move at the time, assuming Kinlaw would be better than he's been. 54 grade as a rookie.
And he's had injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
But my point is, there's a risk attached to that,
Sure.
and they're living the negative side of that risk.
Even before his injury last year, 166 snaps. That's all he played, but 50 grade. So he's graded in the 50s in his 2 years. He's only got 832 career snaps. They need Kinlaw to be better. Big defensive tackle. What's the over-under here for the Niners? 49ers. Niners. They're not in order here. Over-under 10.
10.
Because the division's good, man.
The division is good.
At least the top 3 teams look pretty good.
Yeah, with the exception of Seattle, who probably aren't very good.
We'll get to them. We'll get to them in a minute.
They won 10 a year ago with Jimmy G. I mean, I can't see them losing less than that. So over.
Remember last year, Deebo Samuel started playing a little bit of running back.
Yeah.
They've
incentivized him to keep doing it because remember, he didn't want it.
Yeah.
He was objecting to being used as the wide back without any additional, monetary compensation.
Deebo's
By the
just
way,
a special player.
the
man.
way that they've done that is very clever.
What's that?
So remember that the Deebo didn't like being a wide back because if I'm doing 2 jobs, why am I getting more money? And also, by the way, it's reducing my longevity in the NFL because running back the position is less durable. So. Okay, how do you fix that? Well, the 49ers have essentially incentivized bonuses attached to whatever rushing yardage he gets or rushing production. So it's like we were getting a buy-in, right? If you get X hundred yards rushing, you get a little bit of cheese, get a little bonus, which is fine. But so you're incentivizing him to be okay with that. But that doesn't address what should be his fundamental problem with it, which is. Yeah, but I'm taking years off my career, and if I lose 2 years on the back end, that's like $20 million, not the $500,000 bonus I'm getting. I'm getting hosed here.
Yeah, I mean the Niners, you don't want to lose his longevity either.
No, but
so they're incentivized to keep him
But to an
healthy.
extent, that's just part of the bargain for a player. You know what I mean? But anyway, my point being that they very cleverly got him on board with keeping him as one of the most dynamic matchup weapons in the NFL without really having to do a lot.
I think they got to get Trey Sermon out there a little bit more, to be honest. I think Trey Sermon could be pretty good at running back. Elijah Mitchell was good until they did hand a lot more of the keys to Deebo.
I mean, the other thing about the 49ers is just the constant, lottery ticket of their backfield. They keep drafting running backs high and then using other running backs.
The other question, too, you lose Laken Tomlinson, who's been a really steady left guard in that system for Shanahan through the years.
Yep.
Aaron Banks, second-round pick from 2021. He's going to probably try to step in there. Daniel Brunskill might have to step in at center. Alex Mack retired. Spencer Burford's a rookie that's probably going to play, and there's a couple other guys in the mix there. The interior of this offensive line is not question marks, we'll say, right, when we talk offensive line. So you have 2 really good tackles. Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey comes back. But the interior, we don't know exactly what we're going to get from them. That could be the one thing that potentially derails the 49ers as well, which is why I'm curious to see how much they let Trey Lance run. We didn't see Trey Lance, the runner, as much as I thought last year. Not the scrambler, but the designed runner. Not as much as I thought. I thought they'd mix him in even when Garoppolo was the starter. They might not want to use him that way, but I'm interested to see what they do offensively. Over under 10 here. What did you end up saying here?
Over
as well. Trey Lance at the end of the year is going to look pretty good. What do you think? Statistically, and they're going to feel pretty good about Trey Lance at the end of the year?
Yeah. I think that the bar for him to clear to be better than Jimmy G is pretty low, and I think that they'll end up being I think the team will end up being better because of him being in there, because of all the stuff that they can do.
Yeah, I think they'll feel good about Lance by the end of the year. 31 teams down, 1 to go.
Let's go.
Is that right?
It better be.
Did we forget your team? If we forgot your team, put it in the chat below.
Only after liking the stream, so we go viral.
Yeah, we got to go viral. Everybody, what is it? Pound the thumbs up button or pound the like button. Pound the like button. Is that what the people say? We only have 59 right now. We should get to there's 320 people watching. We should probably have 320 thumbs ups.
Yeah. So it's a lot of people that are watching and not thumbing up, whatever.
Look at this. Yeah. Crush the thumbs up button, and we'll go viral. And you'll go viral with all your comments. And
everybody goes viral.
If you comment a lot and you thumbs up a lot,
it's a win for everybody. We
all go viral together because we're a family here, PFF NFL Podcast. Seattle Seahawks, speaking of family, it's a family environment that Pete's built up there. The Russell Wilson era is over.
Yeah.
Traded. We got a camp battle between Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Looks like Geno Smith is the leader in the clubhouse here for the Seattle Seahawks. It's a weird spot for the Seahawks. I don't know what they're going to do here. Their over-under's 5.5.
Yeah.
That's it.
Good. It shouldn't be any higher than that.
They're a rebuilding team.
Yes. They're a rebuilding team with almost nothing to like outside of the two receivers that they have that were already there.
Receivers are so good. They just locked up DK Metcalf. You got both guys signed, 4 years remaining for both guys, for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Over $17 million for Lockett, $24 million per year for DK Metcalf. They had an intriguing draft. You got to replace both starting tackles.
Yeah.
You probably have two rookies stepping in there, and Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. It's just tough with Pete Carroll and his age, with a roster that looks like they're starting over. But they also, if this draft hits the way it could, you might be looking at a team that's like, all right, this is a nice little place to find the next quarterback a year from now.
Why you got to keep bringing up Pete's age? Man's got the energy of somebody half his age.
That's a good point. Maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, this is age shaming, ageist.
Yeah, I shouldn't do that.
No, particularly not at your age.
I feel like we're the same age.
Anyway, sadly now we are again. Anyway, well, at
you nailed it.
You shouldn't be doing that.
Good delivery.
Yeah, look, the receivers are still there. The receivers were already there, are still there. The problem is, like, Tyler Lockett, I think, has shown that he's system, quarterback, whatever, proof. He's good, independent of whatever's around him. DK Metcalf, I think, is a more up in the air status. We know that he's an incredible deep threat and just a physical threat, a guy that can just run past you at any given moment. But he was paired with literally the best quarterback in the NFL to maximize that. A dude with the best deep ball in the NFL, with a propensity for those moon balls. Like, nobody in the NFL is better at connecting with DK Metcalf than Russell Wilson will be. So you have to expect that DK Metcalf suffers some kind of drop-off. And then the question is, how much further can he broaden his breadth of skills to take advantage of a worse quarterback and actually still be a really high-end impact player? That, I think, is we need to see that. Outside of that, bad quarterbacks, regardless of which one starts, an offensive line that's probably not any good, and a defense that's lost all of the talent that made it good.
Except Jamal Adams.
He wasn't the talent that made it good.
Oh, the talent that made it good? Yeah, that's true. Pass rush has been a question for a couple of years now. They've added a lot of pieces in the draft, the second round, mid-rounds, that type of thing, but it's not like you're looking at it's a crapshoot of who's going to rush the passer, right? Uchenna Nwosu comes in. Darrell Taylor's looked pretty good at times. Alton Robinson, Boye Mafe's an intriguing rookie pass rusher, but nothing locked in, nothing set in stone as far as that goes. And then from a secondary standpoint, they've somewhat rejuvenated Sidney Jones. They bring in Artie Burns maybe to start. It's a five-way battle for corner right now with the rookies. Kobe Bryant are in there. Tariq Woolen is like the freakiest athlete. Him and Trayvon Walker are the two freakiest athletes maybe in NFL draft history, both in the same draft. But Woolen went in the 5th round because he's just an unpolished corner.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of hey, maybe a year from now, if Tariq Woolen developed, right?
Perfect Seattle corner, though.
Oh, yeah. But he's in the right spot where it's like, I think Seattle fans should be in this, who's going to be a part of the future here.
I think the thing that sort of typifies just how bad things have gotten for this team is, remember, they tend to draft slightly weird players relative to what everybody else thinks. And a few years ago, they drafted L.J. Collier at the bottom of the first round, 29th overall pick. And it's like, oh, maybe he's going to be their pass rusher of the future. Collier has done nothing in 3 years. The dude has 35 career pressures in 3 seasons and is still, like, on the roster. Like, he's had the kind of start to his career where on any other team he would have been drop-kicked out of the building a year ago for just being an error in judgment. And he's still there and could still be a contributing player for them this season. The defense has just eroded the talent level over a number of years, and now it's bad. And the offense outside of the receivers is bad. This is a bad roster, arguably the worst in the NFL, certainly one of the worst, and I don't have high expectations.
I also don't have high expectations for the Seattle Seahawks. Does Pete get his way where they run the ball even more than they did previously? Rashad Penny. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Rashad Penny, who looked like unstoppable.
If Penny stays healthy,
yeah,
and they get that 1-2 punch of Penny and Kenneth Walker, that is a fun backfield.
Now, again, I don't know what they do up front because this is where it's like the positive vibes coming out of the draft, because you can look at Seattle's draft and say it was really good. A lot of good things. Maybe they drafted the running back too high, but a lot of good players, a lot of picks. So you have Charles Cross, who comes in at tackle, and Abe Lucas at right tackle, who I mentioned. But that position almost certainly is going to get worse than it was last year, where they had an aging Dwayne Brown, but still good. He's still a good player. Dwayne Brown at left tackle and Brandon Shell at right tackle, who was solid. So you can like the draft. You can like how they replaced those two guys, but they're still probably getting worse at tackle, right? That's the problem with the Seattle roster right here is it is just built for the future. It is built to find guys that are going to be a part of the rebuild. I don't have faith in Geno Smith or Drew Lock as a franchise quarterback. Who knows? Maybe they're completely rejuvenated. Who knows? But Geno Smith had a couple nice games last year, but you still saw some of the same issues where he's holding the ball a little bit too long, and he got strip sacked in overtime against the Steelers in part because he's holding the ball for almost 4 seconds. All that stuff has to get better, and it's probably not just going to get better here in like year 8 of his career. So
yeah,
is that it?
Yeah, I mean,
Steve Largent isn't walking through that door.
I doubt it, and if he did, he probably wouldn't be much of an upgrade at this point.
He wouldn't be. He could probably play the slot with those guys, though.
Well, since Dwayne Eskridge can't get on the field. Eskridge I liked coming out. Bo Melton, I think, is a really nice receiver that could make an impact as a slot guy. There are some players that are interesting, on this team that are compelling, that are reasons to watch, but, I can't see much of a way this isn't a pretty rough season for Seattle.
Look to the future, man. Quandre Diggs is good at safety. You got to look to the Tariq Woolens of the world. He's a 5th rounder with just incredible size and movement skills and all that stuff. But he's an unpolished corner.
Look, you're
watching those guys in their development.
Their mini dynasty, whatever they created with the Legion of Boom and the Super Bowl win, and the success that they had was built effectively off one draft. If you nail one draft and you get a ton of really good players, that sets up a team. So
okay, it was 2. That was 11 and 12.
Whatever. They're not. Anyway, my point being, this year you can't do that because you're not drafting a quarterback. So you didn't take Russell Wilson this year. You're not going anywhere in the future. But if you look at this draft and you end up with, hey, Kenneth Walker is the best running back in the NFL right out of the gate. Bo Melton out of nowhere is a really useful part of your receiving core. Tariq Woolen turns out to just he flourishes into the player that athletic, freakish ability can give him as a ceiling. Boye Mafe is a really good pass rusher. Finally, you've got somebody rushing the passer for the first time in years. If that happened at the end of the season, great. We won 5 games, but God, we can look at this and say there's 5 or 6 young players here that are part of the solution, not the problem. And then we just need to find a quarterback. And by the way, we're in a pretty good position to do that because we won 5 games. If that doesn't happen, though, this is...
Yeah, the other part of all of the how did we get here issues, you trade multiple first-rounders for Jamal Adams, who, at the time was one of the best all-around safeties in the NFL. He was right there with the player in usage pattern by the Jets, ability to he was decent enough playing deep. He was better playing in the box, and he just hasn't fit in this system. When they've dropped him into coverage, he's not been great. Remember in 2020, he was essentially their top pass rusher. They let him pretty much play kind of edge, blitz, but also just straight up rush the passer. And Jamal Adams was really good doing that. But it's tough to justify that skill set for multiple top first-round players that you lost. When the rest of the NFL right now, there's a lot of first-round trades going on, but it's all for quarterbacks and receivers. It's all for quarterbacks and high-impact players. And Jamal Adams just has not been that guy for Seattle. So that's just one of the things that I think has come back to bite, and why they drafted 3 times in 2021. When you only bring in 3 draft picks, the next year, a year later, it's tough to have a good deep roster, right? That's why you had to specifically fill 2 starting tackle spots in the draft, or why you have to actually fill roles with draft picks. And that's just where the Seahawks are right now. They could go under that 5.5. They go over the 5.5 if Pete Carroll just is an excellent head coach, like a maximize the roster head coach. Yeah. I don't know that he's been that guy these last couple of years, but maybe he's that, like, he's a good underdog head coach. You know what I mean?
Particularly in that division, it's going to be tough to win 6 or more games, I think. So 5 under.
I'll take under as well for the Seahawks. There are some outstanding bets. We will have a bet show. There are some Seahawks fans that are optimistic and are going to be pushing back on that. We might take some bets here. Geno Smith is a preseason champion, someone says in the chat. He's also like Mr. Week 17. He's also very good the last week of the season, historically.
Sure. Yeah.
That's it. All 32 teams completely previewed.
Done.
Appreciate everybody for pounding the like button. Get that like button. Smash it. Smash the like button. That's what they say.
Smash the like button.
It's getting worse and worse.
It really is.
Thanks to Manscaped, Underdog Fantasy, DraftKings, all of our friends for being here with us. We got Mr. Old Takes Exposed. Is going to be here on Monday. Mm-hmm. By the way, preseason.
His book right here.
Full action of preseason this week. So by Monday, we're going to overreact to the preseason. Is that right? Is that what we're going to do?
In addition to talking to Mr. Old Takes Exposed.
Mr. Old Takes Exposed is going to be
here. Mr. Takes Exposed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mr. Takes Exposed. Yeah. Anyway. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Yeah. All of our previews, go check them out if you didn't see the previous ones, and we'll be back here on Monday recapping all of the great Week 1 preseason action with Mr. Takes Exposed.
Remember the GoFundMe for raising money for a good cause and for, pitching.
GoFundMe.
In a way that Steve is not inspired by.
You're going to throw 60. You're going to do it.
Yeah.
And hit the like button on the way out. Thanks, everybody. See you Monday.